Greetings, brothers and sisters. Hit the like button. Happy noon. Happy noon. How are y'all doing? I see a lot of people. I like Jim. Oh, thank you. I see a lot of people left a scathing comment on Cosmic Skeptic. Oh, that guy. That's the same guy, right? Not Rife. Yeah, we're going to review him. Posh is going to be with us today. That's exciting. Let me get some light on this face. I hope you enjoyed the stream last night. That was really fun. It was awesome. Gonna do a lot more of those every Thursday. Mixed bag. Next week, the one guest we do have confirmed, his name is Tim Gordon. He's a fairly prominent Catholic YouTuber. You've probably seen him around. Great show last night, thank you. And T-Dump was chill. We got T-Dump to, excuse me, to chill. T-Dump chilled. Brutal views though, huh? I mean, almost like troll level view of morality. Sometimes I wonder, like, sometimes I convince myself that maybe people like that are, they're doing like performative art or something, you know? Andrew comes out of the gates on these asexual. Yeah, he does. Need a recap? Recap, yeah, we'll do a short recap a little bit in the front with Posh, because I definitely want to, his take on T-Jump's moral position. By the way, if you missed it, this guy says that morality is like a field, like a force, like gravity, or something like this, which right out of the gates has really horrific, incoherent consequences. I have a defeater to the position already, but there are other fun ways to explore how stupid, no offense, that position is. It's even the atheists are like, what are you talking about? Morality is a field. I ask what a field is. He says it's filled with field stuff. It's a force field. Even the atheists are like, this is crazy. This is crazy. James says, be careful not to use T-Dump's barber. Your hair's getting long. Yeah, I could. That's a slippery slope with the hair. So yeah, we're gonna get Posh on. We'll get his take. He was obviously drunk and up late, way too late in the comments. It was probably a good thing I didn't let him on. He was basically like, let me at him. Let me at him. Hold me back. So, but Posh will have his own spot on a panel. He doesn't need to be pulled up as a rando. He'll have his own seat. With that, welcome, Posh. Hello, Posh.
Hello. The one time you start early.
Yeah. The one time you take a shower.
And I'm very eco-friendly about these things.
Yeah. Speaking of showering, do you guys have like dating apps in Serbia, or does someone just carve like an image in the tree?
We urinate on a
Yeah. You just urinate and wait.
Which is the tree of love, and then
exactly, yeah.
If we do, I have not used any.
Right.
I'm not very fond of getting murdered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not too fond of life either, but that's going overcorrection.
Yeah, they'll hit you with a stick if you're swiping. If you're not caught swiping,
you get swiped with a
exactly.
With like a
so let's start.
One.
Before we get really into the silliness we're about to review, I wanted your take, particularly on the panel last night, but specifically the T-Dump morality as a force field. I wanted your reaction to that.
Well, you should have seen the one yesterday, but I'm a lot more corpus mentis right now. But
good.
So I can't believe people. I told you today that as atheism keeps unraveling, their arguments become more deranged. Right. So they're trying to plug the idea. Oh, it's actually grounded in this. I mean, this is the first time I've tried to. I've seen someone try to plug it into physics or whatever. But no, it's just trying to externalize it. Right. Have something you can point to. And even though there is no actual connection between the two, and he can't even justify why something is moral or immoral, he just, again, presupposes what is good and what is bad, and then says, oh, it's based in this. It's a field. It pulls you in a certain way, which actually sounds like panpsychism, more than anything else. It doesn't sound materialistic at all. But again, any type of morality, if you just use the word morality as in how we should behave, that again, we constantly need to reiterate. It's not, morality isn't about being nice. It's just about behavioral patterns. You can consider it moral, again, to oppress the weak. You just, because your primary, focal point of morality is subjective field, is just going to be, strength, power, competence, some type of meritoriousness, in some other fields other than just, oh, I feed the poor. Well, you're sort of just saying that that's moral objectively.
Yeah, this comment shows a problem. I mean, I asked a simple question. I just asked, is morality akin to what you say gravity is, which is causal, right? So now we're mechanistic, right? So causal features, regardless of your view on gravity, just grant that there's some cause or whatever. I asked, is morality a cause? Is the field or force a cause? He says yes. And then I say, what is the thing it's causing? And it ends up being the same answer, morality, things that are moral, right? So, and then the problem of, well, I don't even think he fully understood this question. If morality, in his view, is a field or a force that causes things in the world, then how does he know it's not influencing his interpretation of the outcomes that he's judging, right? So this is a massive problem. This is actually the same argument against the materialistic universal mechanism, right? So that there's some cause. Well, how do you know what you're interpreting is unaffected, or how would you determine the absence, as he put it? Because he's actually using consistent language with theism. Like, he actually says that immorality is the privation of this law, of this force, right? So he's kind of borrowing a little there, but it's so absurd. It's defeated in a very simple couple of premises. Premise one, morality is a force that acts on the world. Okay, he agrees. Premise two, what's immoral is the imposition on one's will. The force, premise three, the force imposes on people's will, right? So the very thing he's referring to, that's this causal thing called morality, a force, actually imposes its will on the physical world, right? So it's already a contradiction in his own view, and he couldn't wiggle out of it. He started with morality as a causal force. Then when I brought this up later, this argument, he said, no, it's not a cause. And so maybe he's just trolling.
I don't know. I think it's either that or he is sort of improving. He's winging it, trying to make it up as he goes along, because there's this interesting dynamic at play where you're saying, well, it's a force. Okay, what is it acting on? It's acting on humans. Okay, and when B.S. Lewis, the resident
resident troll,
asked me, I asked, why is it wrong, to oppress the weak? And he said, he just mentioned strong and weak force. And I said, ask, okay, but how do you determine which one is the strong one, which one is the weak one? Right. So again, just plug it into something that's an existing system and pretend like there's an actual connection between the two.
Hmm.
And as you said, any force then can be considered a moral cause, a moral agent, even in a certain sense. But if gravity, so to speak, like pushes or rather pulls, like a potted plant onto
Hmm.
your head and kills you, okay,
Right.
so gravity is a moral agent.
Hmm.
Well, no, then they would again have to appeal to some type of mind, but the
Yeah.
mind is just like that potted plant. It's
Hmm.
just an object that's being affected by a force.
Yeah.
And that's it. At no point could you discern a moral agent. It's
Yeah.
cause and effect.
Right, and it doesn't. This force doesn't interpret its own value judgments about the
No.
world. So what is this? What is this force if not just another? How does he know this force isn't an effect of another thing? Right? It's just endless regress in that sense. But that last chat I brought up was interesting, and we didn't really get to focus on it. But when you say, well, what other forces are acting or working against this force? If you're going to do comparative analysis of forces against forces, but then I asked the question, on what in the natural world is it not affecting, right?
Yeah.
Where is it absent? And he said, well, conscious beings. And I'm like, oh, great. So we're now into the
Yeah.
vegan blurred line. Is the moral force acting on a Krabby Crab, right? I didn't get to get into this because, kept it a little
Yeah, and I
lighter,
heard
but
him say the classic vegan retort.
mm,
It's oh yeah, but I'm not saying the animals have the same level of intellect as we do.
mm-hmm,
Well, okay, so if I'm more intelligent, am I less affected by gravity or
mm-hmm,
by any other force that he would care to, propose?
mm-hmm,
No. So it's just pulling things or pushing things,
mm-hmm.
etc. There is no, like, it's a intellect is like a mass. What mass would be? Bloody hell, I can't speak.
Mm-hmm.
Would be to like a gravitational pull, so
Right.
it makes a difference. No,
Mm-hmm.
if it's a force, it's not just injecting information into my head and then I have to process it and
Mm-hmm.
then I choose a result. He would
Right.
have to say, then by definition, more intelligent people would be more moral,
Right. Right.
right? That would be an inevitability.
And then eugenics, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
a
actually,
sense.
but there's no correlation there. Like you're
Right.
saying, if you're less intelligent, you're more immoral, or the opposite.
Mm.
It's just trying to, again, because if you're winging it, it makes sense to sort of throw off the accusation that, okay, so you want animals to be put on trial, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So he just says, oh no, it's a difference in intellect, level of
Right.
intellect, actually, not even a type.
Right.
So nothing makes sense unless you're winging it or trolling.
One of the two, yeah. And what was your thoughts on Pine Creek's performance? Is he winning you over in a sense?
I like him, fair enough.
Mm.
He's not a git. That's what I appreciate. He takes a joke, right? He can dish it out as well, and I appreciate that. I just think his reasoning is rather, unsound.
I think he knows his reasoning's unsound, but
Oh
he's
yeah,
just
but he can't get away from it.
he can't. Well, if there's, let's say there's even if someone said this is like a false binary, that it's either naturalism or Christianity, let's say, right? It's very hard for the rational atheist. It's a funny term. To say, well, shit, this view isn't working for me, and I know it, and there's these other things I need to appeal to, even though I don't believe in their foundations, yet their activities make sense. I just can't get behind. So maybe it's miracles or something. And you actually saw his incredulity show, because when you ask someone like Doug, what would be the determining factor, it would be his version of a miracle, not any version of a miracle. His version was a loved one resurrected in front of his eyes or something like this. And so this is what he doesn't realize is that he's using the same epistemic framework of naturalism to make a judgment on what the criteria would be to believe in supernaturalism. So show me some event that defeats naturalism, even though the very thing that he's trying to make happen is from that reasoning, right? And so that's why transcendental arguments, paradigms, presuppositions are the only thing we're really arguing at the meta scale. Not to say we can't have arguments in the empirical sphere and whatnot. It's just that when you really start asking the question of, well, what's the system in which you're negating something? What's the ultimate thing? And we'll get into this because the lisping guy, we're going to bring him up first and then deal with Alex O'Connor. But is there anything else you want to say about the mixed bag hang, because you were in the chat heavy?
I wasn't there for the entire thing. It was rather late, and I was rather belated in my thinking. But I want to say I understand that, and I think I mentioned this before, that we often find something we can't really explain. For example, in the Bible. It's not like, well, then there's no God, or Islam is true, Buddhism is true, I'm going to go be a pagan.
Right.
No, you sort of struggle with it. And with people like Doug, the thing is, if he believes it to be true, that does not mean that he wants it to be true. So he wants things to be different, but okay, you don't want someone you...
That's funny, honey. That's funny. Yeah, yes, I missed that. Yes. Yeah, that's funny.
I, on the other hand, am a git. So
right.
But again, you don't want something to be the case, but you sort of have to accept it. You don't want to be in bankruptcy. Okay, but you are. So you denying it or pretending it isn't the case is at least from your perspective. I can appreciate him, at least trying to stay consistent with what he believes to be true.
Yes. Yeah, this is what's kind of frustrating about it all, is that when you're engaging with people from that specific lens, if God actually was real and it was true that God existed from their view, then anything that seemed to be insane as far as happenings in the world would suddenly become less insane, right? But they do it in reverse. They say, show me the insane thing, and then God, therefore God, versus, well, no, this is why the tag argument is so important. It doesn't just apply to knowledge, which is probably the best argument, isn't it? Like, God is the necessary precondition for knowledge, or a whole list of other things we consider to be real in the world.
And it also excludes certain types of deities, right? It's not just between materialism and having a god, or even a singular one. It really narrows things down quite a bit.
But then you couldn't do that without first getting to the stage where they accepted. That's why I always start with the mind, and it's not the best argument, is that you start with something they do agree exists that they have no justification for. So for Doug, he admitted existence itself is a miracle under his own standards. That's the argument I use against them. Things like logic and truth, are they conceptual? Do they assume a mind that's not just a human being generating something we call truth? Are we creating it? Well, no, they deny that too. Some try to bite the bullet, but then it's a disaster. But there seems to be it's a long bridge. You can't just tag someone necessarily, right? And then they see the path to the next phase of inquiry. And maybe that's why they're so frustrated with tag. It's undefeated because it applies to any view. But it's frustrating for them. So I understand the atheist view a little bit more now, that when you just come in and do the tag on them, and the context isn't right or they're not ready, it's more like a prideful thing, which I've definitely done myself. But now with panels and stuff like this, I'm seeing that, well, you have to meet them on their road and then sort of like hijack their wagon and start sort of like whipping the horse in a different direction. slowly, and it might take weeks. It could take years with people we know and love, even. So, anyway,
can I also say that I make this point when people say that in the old days, it's a field, it's not a particle.
Yeah, it's a field. Yeah. Go on.
Typical, Christ tard. But it's when people say, "Oh, the Greeks, for example, after the Seleucids failed to conquer the Ptolemies, they say, okay, we're going to have a scapegoat," and they read it in this sort of like a cynical political maneuver. But no, so they blame, the Jews for not sacrificing to Zeus, and that's when we get the sacrificing of pigs to Zeus in the temple, the desecration, etc. But it's that they read in cynicism. But as far as the Greeks are concerned, that's actually their worldview. Their worldview is actually, we have all of these gods and we need to keep them, satiated, if not happy. And if we do so, they'll help us out. We will have their favor and we will win, or we will have a good harvest. We will be successful in whatever type of endeavor, etc. So when someone breaks that, they actually see it as a metaphysical reality that the gods are going to be displeased. And that's how they view their gods, right? It's not this friendly thing like we see God as a loving father. The last thing you would want of Zeus is to take a liking to you. That tends to end poorly for women especially. So they would actually be honest in that. We would think of it as mad now, but we have a completely different perspective.
Now, let me turn these a little down. The little Jim Bobs.
They're amazing.
Yeah, they're blowing up too. Good for them. Someone said something here. Oh yeah. J Doe says a field has never been defined. Excuse me. I think T Jump defined it pretty well. He said it's filled with field stuff. Quote.
That's what the Oxford Dictionary says as well.
That also says field stuff. Michael King, $5. Thank you, Michael. How much in super chats for Posh to permanently replace the word no with nay? Oh, that's up to Posh. And if you wanna raise that money, definitely do it on his channel and catch every time he says no.
It would have to be a subscription service.
Subscription, yeah. Nay. Yeah.
Nay.
Oh no, this young muzzy guy saying he's Jesus now. Well, the good news, Liz, is that's close to the end of the cycle. So that's either going to go really bad or he's going to hit a wall and it's going to go to good maybe. So thanks for letting us know, though. Pray for the muzzy Lord, one of the bear tards. Okay.
It's not the first time there are like a couple of Muslims in Turkey alone that claim to be Jesus. So
right,
he's just joining the squad.
Yeah. All right, you're ready to look at the digital gnosis, and we won't spend too much time on this because he's just kind of rambling, in my view.
Yeah.
But let's try to be charitable and then uncharitable. Okay. All right. Let's see. I gotta play it on. Can I play it on? Let me see. Oh, there you are. There you are.
One morning coffee thought that I had about impossibility of the contrary claims, right? So
it's a bit quiet.
Hello? Okay.
So I don't know if, for me at least, I can understand it, but I'm not sure about the people listening.
Claim that X is true, right? I believe that, you don't. And so you kind of asked me to provide you with reasons why X is true because you think X is not true. So then I say, well, here's my reason, because it's not possible that not X, right? So if it's not possible that not X, well, then it must be the case that X.
So he's talking in logic nerd language, but essentially saying when we argue God is the necessary precondition for knowledge and everything else, right, from the tag argument, that the argument of the impossibility of the contrary is valid, but he's trying to poke holes in where it might be misappropriated or something like this.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if it's true that it's not possible that not X, then it can't be the case that not X. But then we have to consider what we mean by possibility here.
Depends what you mean by This is a guy who hates Jordan Peterson, by the way. He despises him. And
but that's because Jordan Peterson is in his shadow.
Yeah.
So we junged him up right there.
Yeah. All right.
And in many cases, the standard for possibility is going to be incredibly low. Merely the fact that, obviously there's different modalities of possibility that philosophers will discuss, like logical, physical, nomological, metaphysical, epistemic, right? But for things like logical possibility or epistemic possibility, the bar is going to be pretty low, right? The bar is going to basically be, is there a contradiction involved in that, and like a logical contradiction of the form, A and not A that I can find in that. And for most things, there's not going to be. So take the transcendental argument for God, where it's going to be claimed, well, the impossibility of the contrary, right? The impossibility of logic exists and God doesn't exist. Well, is that logically inconsistent? No, there's not like a contradiction in.
Well, I want to stop him here because, to be fair, if you keep it vague with God, he might be right in a superficial way. But the argument for God ends up being pretty specific, and one of the consequences of the argument, or something that leads to, at least, is questioning any other worldview that appeals to logic, truth existing, meaning, knowledge, information, the world occurring in an intelligible way, everything that encapsulates an intelligible exchange and reasoning, right? We're asking, what other view can account for it, right? What other view? We're also asking that. Now, they say, well, are you saying we have access to every view? Well, what we're saying is that any view you come up with is going to have a maximum amount of starting points. And this is what kind of gets lost in the mix, is that there's not as many views as there are people, because any view has to have some preconditions. So in other words, you can't start a view without a couple of things before it. So what we're really asking is, what's the view that accounts for the things before it? And there's not going to be that many views that take a stab at it, honestly. And whatever view you start with, there's not going to be too many outcomes if you follow it down. It ends up being everything's one thing, monism, or God is all one thing. It's going to end in epistemic nihilism or solipsism, where you don't know shit, or it's going to lead to Christianity. And now you could take side roads to these other religions and philosophies and theologies, but you're going to apophatically start pulling them away, away from the tray, because they won't account for certain things. And these people just take it for granted that logic exists. So from their view, they grant themselves logic and reasoning and rationality and knowledge and truth and the mind, right? This is a guy who rejects the mind, by the way. This is the funny thing. They give themselves all of that stuff like it's free at the flea market. Here's a free bag. It comes with goodies, logic, reasoning, mind. And then they critique after they get that stuff, right? This is what's so frustrating. Anything you want to add before we continue his mumble?
Yes. So this is a commonplace mistake people make about these things. The misapplication, for example, of logical fallacies. Can really classify. Mm-hmm. Okay. it's that people try, as I said, an informal fallacy isn't proof of something being wrong. It's just stating that it is insufficient proof that it is right. Right? It's not a formal fallacy. So when we also talk about, to first bring it outside, like a slippery slope, there's a way in which it is a fallacy. If you're just going to say, if X happens, then necessarily Y will happen, isn't always the best approach to it. But there's also the approach of, if a certain type of argumentation is used to allow for X, but it can also be allowed to also be used to allow for Y, right? Because it's the exact type of reasoning. That's where you get the problem. So it's not exactly a slippery slope. It's basically like saying, well, you can marry anyone you want who is a consenting adult. Okay, so you say that to defend same-sex marriage, so-called. But then you say, okay, what about polygamous marriage? And they say, well, that's a slippery slope. No, if you can marry whoever you want, that doesn't have to stop at just another person. It can be multiple people. So it's the same approach. And then, of course, all of the alleged opprobrium, of saying, well, that's how we're not in the Middle Ages anymore, and et cetera, et cetera. You can just turn that back on someone who's for same-sex marriage, but not for polygamous marriage.
Yeah.
Like,
Also,
that's.
Sorry, I was going to say the slippery slope. More and more, I'm seeing it as a silly contention, because let's say, like you just said, all you stated was the premise and the conclusion, and then what would follow further from that if you take it down, right? That's not a slippery slope. It means that, okay, if you say consenting adults, let's say, can marry and then adopt, how could it not lead to the follow, which is just groups of dudes in a house, right?
Yeah.
Is it a slippery slope? No. All we're talking about is the time, the time in which one's position leads to a total logical consequence of the position is irrelevant to whether it's a consequence of the position, right? And I think the logic that fallacy is so weak.
Yes, and as I said, it comes with the misapplication of fallacies in general. So they will use all types of fallacies to say, "Oh, your argument is therefore wrong." Just let me tie it back. I use the slippery slope to tie it into this. The argument is you need preconditions for something to be possible. And when we were talking earlier, I said one precondition for life being on Earth is having an atmosphere, or even a magnetic field, something to protect you from the damaging. Or a moral field. Protects you from the evil, immoral rays of the sun, but that's a precondition. So the fact that you can imagine a life without an atmosphere, we just don't need to breathe, and the sun doesn't affect us. I can imagine it. So there's somehow that makes it that our reality as we inhabit it can be as such. So no. We have no way of having that. So it's a precondition. And if you are going to take his approach and say, well, there is logic, there is a mind, there is the ability to discuss and discern, we just don't know how yet, maybe. Yeah. That's you just, not accounting for the fact that logically, your worldview does not allow for these things. You have none of these preconditions. So that's the problem.
So, Posh, it sounds like for these people using these kinds of language, when they imagine worlds and they say, well, if you're saying X is the precondition for Y, all I have to do is imagine a world that doesn't require X, right? And so from their view, just imagining that is good enough, which is a problem in itself. But we could get more rigorous and just say, is it possible for you to imagine a world that doesn't have preconditions? Like without saying what the precondition is, how could they possibly argue whatever they imagine doesn't require some precondition? Any world, from their view, has to have a precondition. So all they're really saying is, well, I could imagine that it's not God, and it might, and then you say, well, okay, then the new argument for you, at least, because you need baby steps, is can you imagine a world that doesn't require preconditions? I mean, it's impossible. So that's a logical impossibility.
Yes, but it also ends up in some type of like infinite regress. Oh yeah, but you would need
initial
food,
state,
right?
They say initial state, by the way, when you point.
Yeah, and that's again one of those words that you use, and it's like a nexus. You just throw whatever you want in it, and I don't need to explain that. Even though it's material, right? It's not like we say God is transcendental,
right?
Because it's not the same thing. Because we can appeal to transcendentals, they can't. That's sort of the point of the transcendental argument for God.
Right. Well, they make a transcendental argument in a way. They would argue, the people who, like Nathan here, does actually appeal to an initial state in his argument. So he's saying from a naturalistic position that the initial state is the necessary precondition for all things, and the initial state doesn't need a precondition. The initial state just is. It's just the start of all things. It didn't require any previous law or state, no laws of thermodynamics or heat or gas and all of these things that need to be in existence for there to be a state. You don't need to justify. They just swap God for initial state, and they're basically categorizing in the same thing. This unknowable, unobservable moment in time, but theirs is impersonal, has no intent, purely accidental, but somehow is justified, even though they can't tell you what its preconditions are, lawfully. I use that word to just put it in the framework of they're actually making naturalistic claims about the beginning of all things not needing something before it. Now, not everyone argues this from their position, but this guy I know does for a fact.
And we have terms like prima materia, right? Primordial matter, or primordial chaos, right? Which are these, how shall we say, words or terms that are used to describe nothingness. It's like pure potentiality, right? These things, but these are metaphysical claims. So they can't even go to that, let alone, it's just mechanistic, but then they need the laws, but the laws are also generated. And I don't understand how they view laws as either transcendental or somehow created as a consequence of matter or energy existing in a certain way and then interacting in certain ways. It's the chicken and egg problem, which came first.
Previous, what you're saying is that they appeal to these laws that came out of something that doesn't have laws. But if they have a mechanism that produces things, then you're saying there's something that the mechanism actually follows some law-like pattern. But it just goes back again. It's a chicken or the egg at every level. And so they are making, that's what's so ironic. They are making a transcendental argument for a naturalistic account of a starting point.
Yeah. Like they're trying to patch things up without making it seem so.
Right. Coincidentally, this guy is actually doing a live right now and taking tag proponents. So I'm sure he'll catch wind and maybe he'll show up. Who knows?
Perhaps.
And then you can take out all your rage from last night. That was
is it epistemically possible? Well, let me think about it. I can imagine people doing logic and God not existing. Is it physically possible? Well, I think that you can have a physical state of affairs.
There it is.
Where people are doing logic like that. That's all I see happening when people do logic is people sitting around making markings on pages, talking about stuff and all that. I don't really perceive God in that situation, so I think it's physically possible, but maybe that could be disputed. Metaphysical possibility, I think, is basically not a real type of thing, but if it's physically possible, then it's going to be metaphysically possible. So in what sense is the contrary supposed to be impossible in the case of tag, or in the case of, to make it more neutral, X or not X? We're going to have to go and do some work. That's a notification. And then the other thing I was wondering is, in what sense, though, does this really constitute a good reason for someone to change their mind? So, if you say, well, you already know that I believe not X. If we're having a dispute about X or not X, if you already know I believe not X, then I don't believe that it's impossible, right? I obviously believe not only do I believe it's possible, but I believe it's actual. So when you just appeal to the fact that it's not possible that not X, in what sense is that supposed to constitute a good reason-giving argument to persuade?
I mean, because he's basically making the this is like kind of meta. He's actually who is the fancy pants philosopher who suggested we get rid of the excluded middle? Was it the excluded middle or non-contradiction? And he said we don't need this, and then in the act of demanding that we don't need it, he's using it. I forgot the philosopher's name, but this is similar, not identical. That he's arguing against the impossibility of the contrary, but the only way to do that is to, in a way, argue from the impossibility of the I can't phrase it right. It's like he's basically doing the same argument. So he's trying to say that, well, it's not a valid argument to argue from the impossibility of the contrary, but he's arguing, and by arguing, he has to appeal to logic, and he couldn't argue against it without, because the impossibility of not having logic to argue. This is more transcendental argumentation from the person who's arguing against the tag. But would you say, Posh, that the transcendental argument can be applied not to God, but to logic itself?
Yes, transcendental arguments can be applied to basically anything.
Yeah.
But I think where you might be making a misstep in that is that if you're saying, he's not saying it's impossible for God to exist and for this all to be the case. He's saying his mistake isn't that. He's not saying it's impossible.
Okay.
It's just that from our perspective, he cannot justify, he doesn't have the precondition to be able to appeal to logic or anything.
Right.
And when we talked about how if any thought, any claim, any critique is just a product of mechanism, and mechanism is just, working according to laws and logic and fields, you literally cannot have illogic. It's impossible for something to be illogical because it's just a product of logic. And I think long ago, when you were supposed to debate him, we talked about if you start a car and it goes normally, right? Everything's fine. One day and for 100 days, and then on 101st day, it doesn't. Something goes awry. That's not illogical. Like a car being, broken is not illogical.
Right.
It is still logical, and the fact is simply that it cannot fulfill certain functions.
It's not false either.
Exactly. So anything that anyone thinks of cannot be false as such, because there is no way to appraise it. Whatever thought you have, whatever critique you have, is just a product of mechanism, and mechanisms just do.
They just do.
Or convince me. Fair enough, you yourself might believe that given your commitment to X, right? It's not inconsistent with your commitment to X, but it's definitely inconsistent with my commitment to not X. And so the fact that that's being provided as an argument that's supposed to be persuasive.
The British accent critiquing another British accent.
If that's the purpose of an argument, to persuade you and convince your interlocutor.
He's saying persuasion argument, and Posh, you just accurately depicted this guy's view, which he believes anything out of his mouth is just a consequence of a mechanism in motion. There is no reasons for changing your mind. There's only inputs and the machine spitting out something that's not true or false, that just is.
It just seems silly to me. Like,
silly, yeah.
How is that supposed to be successful? You know, again, to bring it back to tag,
so just to recap, it's silly to him to argue tag from the impossibility of the contrary, and it's not a reasonable argument to change his mind. But his worldview categorizes changing your mind or keeping your mind as just a mechanistic effect of matter in motion. But we're the silly ones for making an argument for logic existing and needing a justification for logic.
To him, like, changing your mind is like shifting gears on an automatic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's more gas, right, or more pressure on the gas pedal, right, and you know, it shifts gears when it thinks it should. Mm-hmm. Right? There's a certain threshold reached, so there's this consequence. So now you're working in this gear,
right,
and that's it. And again, the previous gear wasn't wrong, wasn't false, you know, wasn't lying. It just was, and this now just is.
Yeah. Faster's not truer or better thinking. It's just driving faster, which is no difference, you know, than slower. You know, it's totally silly.
As a proponent of tag, you're like, well, I know you're an apologist and you believe God exists. So how do I persuade you God doesn't exist? Well, I'll just tell you that I think God doesn't exist. Well, how is that supposed to be a good strategy? But then you get into the kind of social aspect of presup and tag, right, where maybe it's not supposed to be the case that it's the argument, that it's the contents of the argument or rational reflection and consideration that does the persuasion, but rather the browbeating sort of bullying tactics that tend to be employed by proponents.
Stop whining.
It's the argument, right? The kind of double standards where they would never accept the types of claims that they use to justify their own positions from their interlocutors, but they accept these very bad explanations. And
he doesn't give any examples. You notice that? It's like a vague Yelp review where you're like, who would never? Who are we talking about here? Use some examples, use some specific arguments. If someone uses a transcendental argument not for God, for something else, I might actually consider it's a valid syllogism. So if you're going to, unless you're going to tell me why it's invalid rather than your own incredulous Yelp review on why you don't like it, an atheist could actually attempt to make a transcendental argument for something. Now, then you need to account for argumentation, of course. So you're not in the clear, but it's not like atheists don't presuppose something, right? They don't. Of course, they presuppose things.
Yes, and as we talked about, the difference between a presuppositionalist and a non-presuppositionalist is that the presuppositionalist is aware of it, and a non-presuppositionalist is not. It's sort of like not being aware of the fact that you're mortal, so you just think you're going to live forever. You know, no, you're not. At least in a certain sense, you will. But you know, you're very much mortal. So the other person who just claims that they are not mortal doesn't really matter. You're just more aware of your own mortality. Or like the fact that you need eyes to see. There's only a certain spectrum that you can see, or a certain spectrum you can hear, etc., etc. You're just aware of the limitations or of the necessary preconditions. And that allows for a more coherent thought, for more in-depth analysis, rather than just, I think it's materialism, but I still believe I can think. Even though there's no mind, you can still change it, because your commitment is to simply protecting your presupposition, which you don't consider to be presuppositional.
Right. It's what would they? Well, if you brought that up, and let's say this person said, "Well, no, Posh, it's not a presupposition; it's just a supposition."
Yeah, but then we would have to say, if you say it's some type of input, or that we are aware of the material, and you're trying to create an overlay over that, and say, but there's this also supernatural layer to it. my critique would be, okay, back into your system, and then try to build back to how would you have the ability to appraise information, right? So if they just say it's a supposition, in this context, it really wouldn't make a difference, because a presupposition is basically saying. Presupposition is saying before we do any logic, we need to have certain standards met. But a supposition is just, okay, we're already in it, right? Yeah. But that's not good enough, because then we need to walk them back as to why they would have to go to a presupposition.
Right. So any precondition would end up being a supposition once you isolate what it is and admit that there are preconditions. In their naturalistic view, the entire view relies on a precondition. If you appeal to evolution and that there's a beginning to things, and then things evolve and sort of change, and suddenly there's the effect of reality permits life and then permits consciousness from their view. They have way more, you know what I mean? Like, they actually have more presuppositions over the course of time that they assume than just God, God creating. So in a way, in that sense, Occam's razor favors the creationist over the naturalists, because they have to do these stages of presupposing preconditions that are perfect, ongoingly perfect, such that these outcomes called, I don't know, rationally, investigating the external world, assuming they have a mind that's conscious, that's not identical to Pashina.
You can just go with presupposing that they're sane.
Sane, right? Okay, another one.
Sanity is very important, because, well, let's go down to the institution where they keep the mentally infirm, right? And see how you can argue with them. But then it would be sort of like solipsism, right?
For their own position, and then raise the standard and probe questions for the other side in a very aggressive manner, and then try to use all sorts of social and emotional manipulation strategies, like, for example, gaslighting in the course of the conversation, getting people to doubt the answers they just gave, but firing off very quick questions again, things like that. To manipulate the person into feeling silly or whatever.
Wah, like that? You mean like this?
Can I say, and I said this before, one reason I understand why a lot of people are rather fed up or have a very negative view of presuppositionalists is that a lot of them are Calvinists. And if you've ever... Jeff, if they ever thought, that we know what it's like to deal with Calvinists, so it's a presupposition that Jeff can't be a believer.
Right. Let me see. Does he ever get to anything? I kind of missed the part. I thought I missed the part where he said I could just imagine a world where God doesn't exist.
That's very early on. That's like first minute
so
or
those
so.
were just some random thoughts I was having about tag that I thought I'd share if anyone is interested. But, there's more stuff to it than just that, right?
Okay, well...
there's field stuff.
Yeah, field stuff, Alex O'Connor. Now, any of you guys, if someone told me he's live... He's more than welcome, Posh, if you wouldn't mind, if he wants to jump on and go back and forth about some of this stuff. It'll be wordy, mostly boring, maybe for the chat. I'm not sure. I'm presupposing that as well. But he's welcome to come on and deal with his position, and maybe we can get somewhere, but maybe not. But in the meantime, if there's anyone who wants to go over there, I'm blocked over there, and let him know that he can jump on and talk to two tag interlocutors right now.
Yes.
Okay, now this guy, this is the fancy pants guy. He's basically, he's like the lingering, he's like the ghost of Christopher Hitchens' he's like the future. Like he's like the embodiment of everything rhetorically and intellectually that Christopher Hitchens was without the humor. Now,
That's what I want to say. He doesn't have the wit.
Doesn't have the wit, but he has all the other deliveries. I don't even know. He might even be from the same area, but you can see the tones and stuff he's very influenced by, which isn't an argument against his positions, but it's just interesting to watch.
He's Irish, which doesn't bode well for him.
It's good to see you again. Disha and I met about a month or so ago on a boat by sheer coincidence on the river.
An Irishman on a boat.
Somewhere.
Let me just look at this room here. I mean, what do we got here? Is this the leader? What is this? Oh, man.
And I was told that there was an upcoming debate at this union that Michael Sherman...
This room reeks of egalitarianism, doesn't it? It's almost palpable. It's like
but it's diverse.
It's diverse, egalitarian diversity just squished into a room. It just smells like justice.
Smells of curry, judging by the woman in the
of God, or whether it was a delusion, and that they were in need of a replacement speaker. Now, I won't go as far, especially given the circumstances, to call this providence. However, it does leave you with a slight sense that there might have been more than chance at play in bringing me to this chamber tonight. But it is exactly that kind of thinking, the seeking of agency and design, where there is in fact none, that I've traveled here in an attempt to dispel. We've heard a lot about arguments, but as a psychological phenomenon, I wonder how relevant these really are to God belief. That is, when you hear somebody recounting a conversion story, how often does it really begin with premise one? You're more likely to hear a narrative or a story, some kind of account of an experience. Indeed, the most high-profile...
I don't know. Is he admitting, in a sense, that maybe our experience and the assumption that we're sane people and we are in fact here, and that we have a mind and something that can't be reduced to matter? I don't know. Is he assuming that might precede premise ones? Every premise one that's ever existed in all eternity, or in the creation of the world, there's a precondition for premises, right?
And we shall see later on how he doesn't use emotion or experience at all.
Right.
He is just pure reason.
Right.
Conversion, perhaps of this millennium, happened just a few weeks ago when the fifth horsewoman of New Atheism,
Totally.
Percy Ali, announced in a long and celebrated essay that she had embraced Christianity.
Yeah, so this is the new thing in the blip in Christianity, or in atheism, that Hersey, the female, I don't know, she was an atheist, activist or something like this.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali, she was more anti-Islam,
right?
Because she underwent female genital mutilation back in Somalia, I believe, and moving to the Netherlands, right, and then became an atheist and became an activist against Islam and stuff. But yeah, let's let him.
Yeah.
Present the full case.
Our favorite is here, Iron. Hitch slap. No, he
is no one's favorite anything.
Yeah, no, he could probably make fun of my shoulders, as people do. He could probably do something about that, but no, his arguments were total shit. I actually would have exposed him if he was still alive and I could make it to a microphone to ask him a question. I could probably produce a contradiction.
His arguments absolute gobshite.
Actually, this guy did a whole video of how garbage Christopher Hitchens' views were and his arguments were.
Reviewer to notice something rather peculiar about this publication. That is, its somewhat conspicuous lack of arguments for the existence of God or for the truth of Christianity. Instead, she devoted the entire thing to talking about culture. She talked about the looming threats of Russia and China, of global Islamism, of wokeism. I think that an essay which mentions Osama bin Laden, Vladimir Putin, and indeed Professor Richard Dawkins exactly as many times as it mentions Jesus Christ might tell us that we're looking at a conversion that is at best insensitive to the truth claims of religious belief, and instead an attempt to escape, or a result, I should say, of a desire to escape certain unfortunate social realities.
Okay, I'm going to just stop it there. Now, why am I stopping it there? Well, it's been highlighted. It's not a new argument necessarily, but it's now new again, let's say, since the Dillahunty debacle. Everything he just said is actually an argument for Christianity under his own view. So the secular humanist, if they appeal to workability between nations and all of the things that they value, if you can come to those outcomes through the Christian view, it wouldn't matter the truth of it. Now, it would to me and Posh and anyone who calls themselves Christians. The truth of Christianity does matter. But from their view...
Your stream doesn't offer any value to the world. You're nothing. You're a stone on the shore, my guy.
Oh, man. So wrong. Hits me every time. So from his view, it actually makes sense from the secular view to abandon truth in pursuit of outcomes, right? Because under their view you can, and we actually demonstrated that last night in the panel. Even T-Jump, the abandonment of truth, if it did produce all the outcomes you wanted, then that's the only thing that would need to be mentioned for the secular humanist. You know what I mean? Is there anything you want to add to that? Because I think that's a really key point that these guys always miss, and they're often not cornered about it. I think that's the problem. They're really not cornered about this particular argument that's been raised again since the Dillahunty debacle.
Well, they sort of try to go through this perceived contrived martyrdom where they're like, yeah, I know it's difficult, but I'm biting the bullet, damn it,
Right.
Mm-hmm. But no, they workability, as the panel yesterday saw, it's difficult to accept it, but then they would have the entire defense of like a metaphorical truth,
Right.
that one.
Yeah.
Weinstein
take. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's like a white lie.
Right.
But again, I wouldn't go via that route personally, because I know how they will hide from it,
Right.
and they will hide somewhere where you can't even reach it. The whole idea of metaphorical truth is like, it doesn't matter how many times you show statistics that religious people are happier, they have more children, etc., etc. To them, that's an indicator of effect, not necessarily the cause identifying facts correctly, but instilling a certain pattern of behavior that produces these desirable outcomes.
Yeah.
But that I can't see anyone convincing anyone of that. Even when
Right.
I debated Dillahunty, remember when I said, okay, you've got a brain, you've got a mind or whatever, and it's supposed to move, but there's no direction to move in. He says, well, if it increases your chances of survival. Yeah.
Right,
And then I said, okay, but we know that religious people actually have live longer and stuff. It doesn't matter. You can't. I know they're just going to be,
They're just
hopping
gonna-
about.
Yeah, they're going to just dance around. It makes sense. I mean, maybe you can trap some people. You just have to get them to accept that first premise that, would you favor the outcomes valued by secular humanism if it meant abandoning certain truths? And then you just find what the threshold of truths or falsities in their view they'd accept. And I think it would be a person to person. This guy, I just don't think he's ever been challenged with that particular argument. That's why I'm drawn to it in this sense, because I know he would have to deal with it. Logan, thank you, Logan. $10. Atheists think they're smart, but this new kid, Alex O'Connor, is no different than all the atheists before him. He's next in line to go around the racetrack. There's nothing new under the sun. I completely agree. I think he's going to exhaust it. He's actually almost reached it before in his career, where he was just like, what is the point of doing some of this stuff, right? What are we getting at here?
That is where God appeared in a dream to Joseph or to Zechariah. It seems that the president of Russia appeared in a nightmare to Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and also endowed her with a skill that I'm unable of, which is to adopt a belief simply because of its political or existential convenience. And again, perhaps my desire for my philosophical convictions to be, true is just too high a margin to demand. What I really want to ask is whether
my philosophical standards are just too much to ask. Watch as this falls apart. He says something, I don't know if it's yet. I'll tell you when he says it.
whether this should be any kind of surprise, this approach, I mean. There is some recognition, even amongst the religious, that this is, at least in part, what religion does, what religion is. It provides some kind of unifying ethic to suppress the more depraved elements of our human nature. Evelyn Waugh was once asked how he reconciled his private hedonism and gluttony. He was accused of being rude and self-indulgent, how he reconciles this with his professed Christianity. He accepted the charge and simply said, "Can you imagine how much worse I would be if I wasn't a Catholic?" Fair enough. I think
His jokes are landing.
that I'm fine.
Really bad. That's not even a good, it's not even a joke. It's actually another argument for pragmatism to adopt Christianity. And again, me and Posh don't recommend this argument. It's just that it's a consequence of his position. If all religions were some sort of mechanistic technological device of nature to keep us in check for things that we just don't prefer.
Not sure what's happening. Am I still going live? Because I thought it was on my end, but I see like the background image is moving.
Getting throttled a little bit here.
I am
Hopefully.
critiquing the one Irishman in Oxford.
Okay, I think we're back.
Okay.
I think we're back. Oh yeah, I was saying, would he rather, if it were the case that people utilize religion or for them to maintain their own impulses, would he rather they abandon it if it meant everybody running around? Now, I'm not saying that would just happen, but if it were the case that it did, people spoke about it in such a way that they said, well, no, my beliefs actually do guard me from my impulses. Thanks for the J harp there. So yeah, anyway, let's
Happy to help.
Suggests that religion is in essence nothing more than a mimetic entity that serves some kind of social purpose like this. That's what it's for, but isn't actually true. And I'm glad to hear that at least one member of the opposition.
Okay, why would, under his view, religion be this apparatus that does this pragmatic thing and it's useful creation? Why wouldn't that be true of truth itself from his view? That it was just a useful apparatus to assume things were true and false, so we can get along and sort of move our matter into its destined aging and decaying, right? Like they just, again, Posh, they go to the flea market, they pick up all the free metaphysical things and necessary things like logic and truth and knowledge and all this. And then they negate the things that they think, well, I don't really need that in the bag, right? And then we go, how did you get the things in the bag? And they go, I went to the flea market. It's a free flea market for all humans.
Position this evening seems to agree with me. I'm not sure if you'll see it that way too, ladies and gentlemen. But I won't say that I know this is the case. Of course, I can't do so. I will simply ask a question of you. What would you expect to see if God existed and all of this was being supervised? What would you expect the world to look like? How would you expect life to have evolved? And if we assume the alternative hypothesis, that is atheism, materialism, that is that the world we find ourselves in is just an amoral arena of accidentally existing organisms competing in an endless struggle for survival, what would we expect to find? And what do we find? A system of natural selection which explains the origin of species on planets.
No, it doesn't. What are you talking about? Do you want to yell at this guy or do you want me to?
I think he's a bit autistic, to be honest. If you yelled at him, he would just be, well, I don't understand why you. But I am upset by like these claims. The origin of species explains. Natural selection explains the origin of species. It really doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't explain the origin of life either.
No.
which is an even bigger thing. And then these massive developments, like one huge one would be getting multicellular organisms. That's also a big, big thing. So it's not just like we talk about abiogenesis and then it's smooth sailing. You have a lot of problems, but he says it as in we know the mechanism. We may not know the finer details, but no, it's an unjustified claim, which is a necessary prerequisite for his worldview. So it's true. It's just a matter of time to discover it, and any critique is just pseudoscience.
Right.
With enough time.
Basically, what he said, it makes no sense. He said, well, what would we expect from a God, a created order, a created, world from God? And then he said, well, and from an atheist view, everything happened, it's to some weird condition. It's basically luck and just chaos. What would we expect from that? Well, how could you say from the starting point that everything is accidental chaos, right? That it forms rationality, intelligibility, right? Workability, cohabitability, all of these things that need to be rational, that need to need regularity in nature, right? So how does he get regularity from this strict chaos? No, Alex. Your view of the start of all things, not only does natural selection not account for the origin of species, your origin story, your origin myth of the creation of the universe and the planet and all these other things, the mechanism you're saying that created that is actually chaotic. It makes no sense. What we'd see from your view is that things weren't regular. Things were really, really wonky, like to the point where we would expect to not be able to expect to see things. Does that make sense? From his view, what we would expect is to not fully be able to know what to expect, because the irregularity would be the regularity in a sense. It's absurd.
Yeah, and it's this again. It's simultaneous chicken and egg. Right, you've got laws dictating behavior, and you've got behavior creating laws, and it's both at the same time. So the cause and effect are simultaneous.
Right.
So none of it makes actual sense once you get down to it. But in a very low resolution, it's not even an analysis. It's like a glance at it. Is what's creating the confidence that they have, because yesterday on my stream I talked about how mechanistic thinking really precedes materialistic thinking. So the materialism is just the ultimate mechanistic thinking, right? And this is why they go with materialism is obvious, and anything else is sort of added to it. Okay. It's supernaturalism is added to it, but so our entire critique is that we are trying to show them how you can't just have material and have your position that you do, and what I'm so annoyed by is, as I said earlier about the simultaneous thing, about how they will go with metaphorical truth. They have certain, like in older video games, especially like checkpoints. They always get a checkpoint to return to, and it's like no progress is made.
Right. Yeah. Another thing to add to this is that from his view, what he would expect to see is that organisms he calls humans have effects called worldviews that are completely consistent with his assumption that everything we're doing and saying is just some effect of a previous mechanism in motion. Why would the naturalist be startled or confused about the variety of beliefs if he actually believes there's no real difference between any of them, including his own, because they're just effects of the mechanism he's referring to, right? That created all things. maybe it's just they've never been confronted with this. Maybe that's the case because to be fair, these guys operate in mostly what is it, classical foundationalism. Like they argue with theists and Christians who stay within the realm. Some of them even appeal to evolution and the capture and Christianities of the world. They never get confronted on these really fundamental things. They get to slip them in, and then the theist doesn't want to look stupid by outright rejecting evolution, right? This is the world this guy lives in. So in a way, it's only partially his fault.
That does not just cause or bring about, but relies upon suffering.
It's very quiet now.
Sorry,
Survival of the fittest is the same thing as the death and destruction of the unfit. 99% plus of all of the species, let alone animals, that have ever inhabited this planet have been brutally wiped from existence. And for what? For our development? It seems that unimaginable, indescribable, and seemingly inexplicable suffering is embedded into the very mechanism by which I'm told God decided to create human beings. I'm not saying this can't be explained on theism. Of course I can't say that. You could say that this is all part of some grand plan of Jobian proportion in its unintelligibility. Maybe there's some kind of compensation in the afterlife. Maybe dogs do go to heaven after all, sure. I'm just asking you what you would actually expect to be the case. I think that we wouldn't expect to see anything like what I've just described if we assume that there is a benevolent invigilator over...
This is nothing but an argument from personal incredulity fallacy.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing to it.
And by the way, when he says, what do you expect? He already has expectations that you are supposed to agree with. Like if God is good, then we would all be just, eating chocolate all day or drinking beer, And that's what would happen, right? Because the only thing he appeals to is sense data, right? Or sensory input, right? So I like drinking beer. Therefore, if God is real and he's good and all powerful, I could be able to drink beer all the time, right? That's not how it works, because there's an entire network of ideas that feed into our expectations. One of them is the fallenness of man. Another one, which is, for example, why we would separate from the predeterministic, my guy, but the predeterministic, worldviews like with Calvinism or Islam, is that this is how we define evil, is movement of the will away from God. So this is already different than just what you can categorize in some pure abstraction. And we temper our expectations with revelation as well. Right. We don't approach things completely abstractly, and I say we exclude predeterminists because they don't even need expectations, because whatever they expect is predetermined for them to expect. But when we have our belief in secondary causality, right, that you can have caused causes, that requires a certain metaphysical substratum. And that also feeds into our expectations. It also goes into humans actually have certain duties to nature, to one another, etc. So failure to be a secondary cause that is properly imaging God, properly aligning himself with God, is also going to have consequences. And it's not as simple as just I don't know, abstract morality is just a joke, I mean purely abstract morality, because
like the field?
Yeah, like the field, but because you're going to temper everything to fit with your preconceptions.
Yeah, well, what's interesting, when you mention this, it always leads to duties, right? Like, so Alex here, let me just read this super chat. Rory Fares 999, thank you. I made friends with some Greek Orthodox folks back in 2005. I thought they were dumb Christians. The truth is they had asked more questions and found more answers than I. I was an arrogant atheist. Well, that's great to hear. And aside from Posh, his short stint of trying to be an atheist or whatever, I think more of us in the West can relate to sort of the rejection, the arrogance, the departure, and coming back. You said the same thing. I think you sent it twice. I appreciate that. Let me know if you want that back, if that was an accident, but I appreciate that. What was I saying? Posh, you said duties. Now, could he stand here, right, and make his arguments without assuming some duty toward the truth? That there's something drawing him to, well, we got to get to the truth, because the truth, there's some sort of duty I have to argue for what's true and negate what's not true. For what, right? Well, what under naturalism would you expect that? No. Why would you expect that under naturalism, that you'd have this metaphysical thing called the duty, other than it's just an urge that's a natural physical urge that you're no different than having to pee or anything else. You're just
it increases your chances of survival, perhaps.
Right. That's all he's doing. Right.
Yeah, so but then it's a presupposition to say truth is always going to increase your chances of survival, because I can immediately think of a couple of things that you might not want to find out the truth of what the government is doing. Yeah,
like all of Hillary Clinton's chefs, for instance. He's doing it's almost a performative contradiction if he was pressed on it, that his very activity now wouldn't necessarily need to value truth. It would just be a reaction to stimuli based on his biology and his biochemistry that told him somehow, without him fully understanding it, that this is going to aid to his survival. Well, now we're back to pragmatism. It doesn't need to be true for survival. In fact, we just gave an example of how it would be the opposite, right? So valuing truth or gaining truth is not always compatible with survival.
We're seeing the process. However, if we assume atheism, not only do we come to explain this phenomenon, but in my view, we also come to expect it. If I'm wrong, however, if the truth of theism...
And yet, from the naturalist view, there are people with varying paradigms of what they determine to be expected, right? As Posh just laid it out, what's expected from us? What's our standard for expectation, basically? The criteria for expectation varies. So under his own view, how could he leave out the plethora of different paradigms that inform our expectations? Why does he leave some out, right? Wouldn't they be all equally valid and useful in the evolutionary process? Of course they would have to be.
And he keeps smuggling in the idea that suffering is evil.
Right. Bad suffering.
This is the myth of neutrality. We can all agree, right? Well, no, we can't. And even if we did, we can agree for completely different reasons which are mutually exclusive. So just conclusion is insufficient.
Right. Atheists assume that if God existed, then the earth would be basically, that's basically what it is. To be really reduced down, it would be like, what did I ask Adam Green once? He said, well, if God existed, why there's all this stuff? And I said, let's say God did exist and you weren't able to discern anything you didn't like. What would you have left to evaluate? You'd just be in this perpetual, like a Sam Harris, his view of like the logical consequence of Sam Harris's view that the ultimate well-being is the moral good. Well, what if well-being was just a bunch of us in helmets, eating, like WALL-E, that movie WALL-E, where we're just eating and having any experiences we want, and we're just basically, in a perpetual state of euphoria. That's the good?
Ask Adam Green, what if there is a God, but you couldn't ever discern size or tilt of the nose? Mm-hmm. Because that would be the most ruinous for him.
That would be the end of his entire charade. Yeah.
Theism is indeed as plain and graspable.
Prosh, thank you for putting that poetically so that my channel can stay up.
As many on the opposition would doubtless like to suggest this evening, then I must ask why religious belief has traditionally, if not essentially delusional in essence, relied so heavily on, if you like, non-rational modes of convincing. A sign as sure as they come of delusional belief is an inability to muster.
By the way, I'm sorry to keep stopping, but he's so full of shit. Under his own view, evolution produced 2/3 or more of the population at any given time in the history of mankind, the delusion of believing in a deity. Now we've gotten to a place where we don't need that delusion. We need a new delusion. How do you argue for all of these things are necessary effects of evolution to, well, no, we ought to abandon this one. Well, no, that's just you experiencing your effect of evolution, right? They can't get out of this. That's why they can't get. Maybe they run from this, Posh. Maybe they never get on a panel where they're confronted with this problem. $10 from ABC123. Thank you so much. How can atheists have disdain in their voice for something they don't believe in? Yeah, that gets into spiritual matters, doesn't it? How can you hate something you don't believe in, like Matt Dillahunty? Yeah, I do ponder that sometimes. I don't know. I mean, without doing some sort of like psychoanalysis, I think generally maybe Posh you'd agree that any one of us at any given point could be in some rebellious state, and some of us stay there longer, and that's the most charitable generalization I can give.
Well, think about it. Anytime you sin, you're in like a smaller, like a microcosm of being in complete denial, because you're not going to be like, beating someone to death and thinking, well, God is so nice and good. You're going to pretend like he's not there for the time being, and then hopefully repent.
Yeah.
Or even more, hopefully stop beating a person to death.
Right. Or he's off doing, errands. God's off doing errands. He's got bigger problems. Yeah, he's got bigger problems. There's only so much in his Excel spreadsheet, basically.
And a resistance against rational defense of that belief, especially in the face of challenge. And most evident when the threat or enforcement, indeed, of suppression or physical violence is substituted in its place. That is the place of rational argument. And this hardly needs explication. Just 600 feet from the door of this chamber, there's an easily missable cross on the floor of Broad Street, which marks the spot where 3 bishops of the Church of England were burned at the stake. Not even for being the wrong religion, but so close. The wrong denomination. The wrong interpretation of the words. Doctrinal disputes like this have a long and violent history within the religious tradition.
Yeah, you don't want to put the long and violent history of just humans in general, right? You just have to develop a cause and cherry pick humanity doing X, Y, Z, but leave out everything. By the way, how could you appeal to evolution without largely, for the most part, some crazy percentage from their view would be pure force? What if they're just evolving, Alex? What if from their view, this is just how they evolved, right? To just...
And what about communism, by the way?
Right. No, yeah, don't mention that. You always laugh. Yeah, everyone can see. We're going to actually have you play out the stream later with that.
Okay.
Logan, thanks for another super chat. Another major difference between atheism and Christianity is that atheism is completely man-centered. Christianity is God-centered. They do. Well, that's one of the inversions. So when someone said in the chat, which is largely true, that these people are defending their own degeneracy or sin, like Posh and I did a while back, a whole stream about how you act and then in post hoc you develop some sort of Frankenstein monster worldview that justifies all your actions. In this case, it's not always the case of degeneracy in the sense that we think of it, which is mostly sexual today. With Alex, I would say from just surface level analysis that he wants reason to be basically the replacement, the God that man. Which makes this comment pretty precise here. It's like this attempt that you're the kind of God, you're the source of reason. Man's the source of all things, right? So therefore, if you start from the assumption man is the source of all these things, they say, well, man is clearly the creator of God and not the other way around. This is their common slogan. Yet, if you said, fine, well, I'm going to grant you that. I don't concede but how could he not be the creator of truth then? Let's say you just say truth can exist without God, right? If the atheist says man created God, why would we accept that man didn't create what you call truth? They'd say, well, no, truth is just like that which comports with reality. Well, are we creating that or are we discovering it? And so they're still stuck. Grant them all their nonsense. They're still stuck because they're making truth claims. Hence, the start of this stream is about the transcendental argument. How do they account for and justify truth being accessible, being argued, being discernible from their rational, naturalistic paradigm? Anything to add to that, Posh?
Yeah, because it's always like that which comports to reality. Our perception of reality changes quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Even if we just take like this basic like scientific worldview, and we'll pretend like not a lot of it is just made up, and it's just a scheme to keep money flowing into the to the funding mm-hmm. for particular projects, etc. Which is a big case with abiogenesis. Doesn't produce anything, but you always need to say, oh, we're just on the cusp of creating the first cell, which they have been for like 20 years or something. But at the same time, like you said, truth, well, how do you know it's comporting? It is with experimentation. Well, a lot of people have done experimentation, then those experiments were superseded by other experiments, and then they say we're inching forward. That also doesn't really work. First of all, because, again, every thought being a product of mechanism, mm-hmm. your thoughts are just these products. Mm-hmm. And secondly, you never have any type of certainty, which is when they go to like, I have confidence in, that's a big Dillahunty thing, right? Saying,
right.
I have confidence. Yeah. And we see his ability to perceive, objective reality with
totally.
Choice of partner.
He has, his level of confidence is pretty high that's not a...
Yeah. Well, I'll have you know, my wife beat me in a pissing competition.
Oh, God. And confidence, I don't need to put the toilet down.
That really ruined my confidence.
Okay. Oh, man, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Like the whole description of truth, the whole truth which comports with reality. Okay, so, we're back to sense data only. Well, no, we're back to preconditions. Are there any preconditions for you to comport something to what you call reality? Reality being this, by the way, an abstract descriptor of the material world, which is not identical to the concept, right? So we're already in metaphysics. How do you verify metaphysics with empiricism that requires assuming metaphysics before you do empiricism? It's the end of their road. I mean, they don't like it, but we shouldn't stop putting the stick in the spoke of the wheel on empiricism. It's a foul, incoherent position.
No, it's just rubbish. But it really appeals. People don't like uncertainty. People don't like chaos, and I don't mean other people. I mean all of us. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain comfort, which is why I hate people who say, "Oh, you're religious because it really makes it,
easier." Yeah.
Right? What was it like? You're in the back of a car, but you're confident that your father is driving, right, and things like that. Yeah. But at the same time, there's also a lot of comfort in knowing that nothing ever matters, nothing ever makes sense, so you can sort of do what you want.
Do whatever you want. Yeah, do as they will.
Yeah. And if they say, well, that doesn't mean I kill people. I didn't say you want to kill people. I said, if you want to, rather comforting as well. Of course, you can also believe in God, and God wants me to kill every heretic, right? I'm not saying that. This is ultimately something that to do with pride. Right. So we all suffer from these things. But I hate the idea that, oh, no, I'm just willing to accept the cold, cruel reality of nothing ever mattering. But at the same time complaining if you kick a dog, that's the greatest form of evil. Or even
You're really stuck on that one, Posh, aren't you? You really don't
openly
like...
so. I mean, I'll have it as a shirt. But another thing is, Christopher Hitchens, in fact, constantly talks about it's celestial North Korea. You can't even escape it in death. Right. So, but you can, and that's also comforting. That at a certain point, you can end it all.
That's really interesting, because the atheist might point an argument from this emotional state that the theists, they're just seeking comfort, and from that point I totally understand. I have compassion for the theists for seeking comfort, knowing that the thought of hope or of something after life, and we just turn around and say, well, then you're seeking the comfort of doing whatever you want here, like our comfort's post and you're posthumous and yours is here. And what is it? Do they cancel each other out? Do the emotional states of seeking comfort? The point is, it's not an argument, because you can just turn it back on whatever condition someone seeks comfort in, and it's a silly. It has no bearing on the truth of the matter at all. In fact, if the naturalist was consistent, they would actually encourage people, because it's an elevated state of well-being, right?
Yeah.
To seek comfort. So they should actually be saying, be a theist, because, it's better. Even Doug might even bite the bullet. I think I've even heard him say it before, where he'd just be like, yeah, no, I if you're getting comfort from that, why would I argue against that?
Can I tie it into something you talk about a lot, which is like standpoint epistemology? You know how a lot of race hustlers or like feminists and these gender theorists, how they say, well, men shouldn't talk about women's experiences. They don't know what it's like to be a woman. Okay, but that also means women don't know what it's like to be men. So women should have no input on that. No, because women have been oppressed. Well, okay. So oppressed people know more than non-oppressed people. How does that follow? I'm saying it's a non sequitur. I'm not saying it's necessarily false. It's a non sequitur in that sense, but it doesn't matter. It sort of feels nice to say it. Or how every time I listen to, I mentioned like Jimmy Dore, like he has this idea like black people know what's up because they've been oppressed. Like,
because they've been through it.
Have you heard the state of the African American community?
Have you seen Mike Tyson? I mean, would you make the same argument for Mike Tyson or James Brown? Like, what? You know what it is? It's this romantic sense that they've seen life, so they have access to what we would call like life smarts or wisdom. They've seen, and maybe it's true that maybe it's true in certain contexts. Maybe they know something that you couldn't identify, right? In a certain environment, maybe a gang sign or something like this.
Oh yeah.
Right.
My entire life has been like I was raised rather properly. You could not too long ago you could swindle me rather easily because I just don't expect it. It's not that I was naive, but I just always had this sense of propriety, And I said, well, okay, I would expect if this person is trying to sell me something to fund, I don't know, an orphanage or whatever.
D. Sims says, as an African-American man myself, I don't take too kindly to this. For those of you who need to know, D. Sims is the reddest person. He's the reddest person ever.
He's like one acoustic guitar away from singing about rich men.
He is. He probably got a lot of attention.
That guy's only got a beard. Like D. Sims is full ginger.
Yeah, full ginger. I gotta do this because I'm really bad at it. Everybody hit the like button. We got about 300 to 400 people here. Take a second, close the chat, hit the thumb. It takes 2 seconds to do. It makes a huge difference. I'm just getting to the point where I'm breaking through the constraints of the algorithm. So you doing that will be a huge help to the channel. So go ahead and do that now. And we'll continue. Give you a second to do that. And we'll continue with Alex O'Connor's argument from personal incredulity. I want them to have better arguments. Like Andrew says, we need better enemies. I want better arguments.
You want more Dougs.
Right.
Fewer
more Dougs.
T-jumps.
Yes. Right. All right. Let's continue with this.
I think it's worth asking why that's the case. Oh, you think that the sun, you think that the
Also, if there are atheists here today and you do want to jump on and tangle, it's probably a pretty good day to do it. We're only about an hour 42 in. So let me know in the chat. I'm not just going to put the link if there's nobody there. Then I don't want agreeers today, okay? Chat, I don't want agreeers. I want disagreeers today.
the Son proceeds from the Father alone, not the Father and the Holy Spirit. Oh, you're about to find out as you meet your Maker.
Wait, back that up.
Wherever
I heard it the
religious
first time
authorities have had.
he ruined filioque.
Yeah, he's just basically saying this contention. Well, he's also, keep in mind, Posh, he just said people, were unalived for their discrepancy, and now he's trying to list the.
Wherever religious authority and the Holy Spirit. Oh, you're about to. The wrong interpretation of the words. Doctrinal disputes like this have a long and violent history within the religious tradition, and I think it's worth asking why that's the case. Oh, you think that the Son proceeds from the Father alone, not the Father and the Holy Spirit. Oh, you're about to find out as you meet your Maker.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't say the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father alone, or the Father and the Son. He said the Son proceeds from the Father and the Holy Spirit. Mm. So it's spirituque. It's not filioque.
Spirituque, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. He would be executed by everyone.
For both of them. He would come and say, "Oh, you really think this is a worthwhile difference to fight over?" And they go, "What?" And they unite.
Wherever religious authorities have had the political power to do so, I would say, and found the threat of otherworldly hellfire to have somewhat lost its efficacy on certain people, then they provide, shall we say, a corporeal simulacrum of this, bringing the flames into our own vale of tears, providing a very worldly inferno to ready the heretic for the inferno that's to come in Hades, reducing heretics to literal ashes, in the full view of anybody else who might have the temerity to
Do they have fancy? Do they have fancy high thread count tissues for you? Oh gosh!
Look at his pocket. He is rubbish. Just showing that he's an Irishman. He can't even make like the pocket decoration.
The pocket thing. Yeah. Well, that's just a piece of paper, I'm sure.
To question or to challenge the authority and compassion of the Church. Why might a religious tradition, which I'm told is balanced upon reason and provability, evolve such a knee-jerk mortal resistance to freedom?
I can't say this enough, that the majority of human reality for this guy is not just carnage, but necessary carnage. So I mean, from his view, the majority of being human, and absent religion, Christianity, Catholicism, whatever he's arguing against, absent the recent, in his view, the recent iteration of this delusion that he's saying we should keep down, we should tamper down. Absent that, what is the majority of human existence from his view? And why? How come he's not arguing against those people, the ones thousands, in his view, millions of years before us, right? 200,000 years before us, who were just pure animalistic savagery, defense, protection, coercion, force, terrestrial gain. Notice how he never elevates them and be like, well, and then in his view, what actually, in his evolutionary view, got us out of that stage, right? It would end up being theism, which is, it's.
Yes, but there's also a couple of problems, like I mentioned with the Greeks, after the failure to conquer the Ptolemies. Seleucus to conquer the Ptolemies, or when any type of group would go after either Jews or Christians who would not participate in the worship of the gods. Mm-hmm. That's true. I agree with the highlighted comment. Mm-hmm. But also, for the majority of human existence, you did not have the luxury of a lot of tolerance, because things fractioned very quickly. Right. People took religion very seriously And what tended to happen also is you get splits that end up in war then.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is trying to suppress that type of event.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's easy to say, I'm not trying to justify just slaughtering heretics, but we have to understand the mindset of the people at the time. We are now living in times of unprecedented luxury.
Right.
So we don't think of these things.
Yeah.
But if most of your life was living in a village, you're not going to take kindly to someone in the village behaving poorly or trying to usurp the order. Because that's your entire life. You are reliant on everything working as properly as it can, especially since people were also on edge after certain events like the Black Plague or after wars. People tend to be really on edge to the point that after World War II, we are still deciding who is good and who is bad by comparing it to World War II. That's such a level of trauma that I think was also sort of intentionally pushed. But it works because it's a traumatizing event. It's not like it was a bar fight and now someone's trying to push it today. No. It was like tens of millions of people perished, and that creates a certain worldview that attempts to avoid it in the future. It's exploited also for modern wars. Like everyone's Hitler. Oh, Saddam Hussein is Hitler. The Ayatollah is Hitler.
Everybody,
everyone's either Hitler or Stalin if you want to go with a different flavor.
Right.
But that's the way people used to think a lot more, because everything was so parochial, everything was so much smaller. You can just blend into the great urban wasteland that are modern cities. And just continue, at your office job or whatever, and just have an existence. No, everything was so almost sacramental. What is our community defined by? Our religion. We congregate in the church. We have these views. We celebrate these feasts, and people weren't kind. Wouldn't take kindly to someone wanting to alter that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always ask these people, like, if they go back in history, they always go to the Amalekites or, all of the crazy customs that were weekly, daily, monthly, yearly, right? Would Alex, just like Gnostic Neil, right? I asked him straight up, let's say that was happening in your neighboring state or country. This is happening, every Tuesday, the firstborn or whatever it is. Are you with me? Ought we stop it? Ought we do something? Ought we use force? And they inevitably say yes. I mean, what is Alex's position? He's going to reason. Well, no, we should bring them to the chambers, and we'll do a debate. On Alex's view here, if a bunch of secular humanists who all follow him declared that it was the best thing for the world, for humanity, to literally eliminate all religious people, it's horrific, but it's just a short-term thing. In the long term, how could they argue against it? I would really want to know the answer. How could they morally argue against it?
No. I would understand how they would argue against it, but it's the idea that it's so unprecedented. Like, you can't argue the other way. Right, it's supposed to be this obviously avoidable thing, because I understand why you had people like Barry Goldwater who were against the United States getting involved in World War II. Like, you could make that argument, but nowadays, as I said, everyone is Hitler, so everything's shit.
Yeah, bring them to the symposium, right?
Bring them to the Hague. Right, it's nonsense, because they sort of expect that if you apply their system, bad things don't happen. And like I talked about how when you get a movement going, whether it be like a revolutionary movement, whether it be just a political party that it's not necessarily radical or anything, but has its own flavor and starts to attract people. At the beginning, it's going to be the serious, sincere people. Right, have the convictions, but as you start to grow, that's when the grifters start coming in. Because why would they come in if it's just a nascent thing? It's not doing anything. But as you gain momentum, the grifters come in, the managerial class starts coming in, right? The drones. And that's how things develop. And then what usually happens, and this was very common in communist places, the grifters actually take out the actual ideologues. Right, the serious, sincere people who like, no, I'm doing this for the people, right? Well, the one who's just in it for the power and money and whatever the grift is for, just sort of, oh no, he died valiantly fighting the fascists. They just happened to be behind him at the time. So that's how things happen even in the church, in secular government. That's what would happen if his type of thinking became more pervasive. In fact, we see a lot of the progressivism becoming rather aggressive. Right? It's gaining so much momentum. It's trying to impose itself. And there was a Question Time. That's a BBC program. Have a panel and it's foul. But you have Peter Hitchens there occasionally, so there's some type of regulation that you have to have sides presented. So if they bring Peter Hitchens and like 5 neoliberals or progressives or whatever hippies, so he's like there to be I hate everything.
By the way, Posh, I'm giving myself 3 months, and my goal is to have Peter Hitchens and yourself and a couple other people on Mixed Bag. I want to see if I can make that happen.
You need to make it more fancy. You call it the eclectic satchel.
Right. Yes. yeah.
But yeah, that would be awesome. But as I said, there was I think he's an actor, just complete, bastard. Do you think, Peter, that they will be hunting conservatives in the bathrooms for being conservative? And Peter says, well, I think there is a time coming where sorry, I always need like a pen. There is a time coming where I believe that we will be persecuted for our beliefs. And people laugh at him. And now, when they compare like how many people in Russia are put in prison for social media posts versus the UK,
Right.
and it's like 300 to about 3,000, and Russia has a larger population, so it's not even that type of discrepancy.
Right.
But you post something, I'm not sure about this transgender business, and whoops, there they go.
Yeah. Right. Something you mentioned before about rewriting history, and we mentioned standpoint theory, where the person who lived it gets to rewrite it. And I thought of the closest example of that, at least for human beings, at the family level, wouldn't it be, what is it called? Is it the eulogy, or the thing on the stone, right? The thing we write on the stone about the person, or even the thing that goes in the paper,
epigraph.
right? Yeah. This thing it's kind of like an example, and you never write all the foul stuff about the person. It's a revisionist, and not that you should. It's just funny that that what is it called? The obituary. The obituary is basically standpoint theory for death in the family, in a sense. But now you expand that to entire cultures and histories of nations, wars, things that preceded war, and then how do you gain back the or at least closer to accurate representation of history? I don't even know how you would. I mean, first you'd have to just stop going to all the public schools, right? Now, you're in Serbia, so you don't have this problem of leftism and all this nonsense getting
We
into
had
this.
a lot bigger one not too long
You had a bigger
ago.
one, yeah. So you're in the start of the cycle. So you need like two generations maybe. Some blue hair, more technology, more entertainment, and then voila, right?
Yeah. As I said, we don't have your type of degeneracy. We
Right.
have the old-fashioned ones,
The kinds
like
that virtue
plump-breasted
degeneracy.
singers and things like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
All right, but at the same time, it's sort of, the oppression Olympics. I can't take care of my hair, but like, when then people say, "Why are all these people bragging about losing wars?" I don't get it. Oh, you defeated us, so you owe us money. Like, no,
Right.
sort off.
Yeah. I'll ask again in the chat. You got 300 and nearly 400 people here. Are there any atheists who would like to jump on and have a hang? We don't have to go full debate. We could, but is there anyone? It's like B.S. Lewis was really loud when it was the panel when Daddy Pine Creek was on, but he's not here to save you, B.S. Where are you? Where are you?
That's what I go to people who believe that the Son proceeds from the Father and the Spirit, and I say, "Hey, do you want to hang?" He says,
Yeah.
"Yes."
Oh, whoops. Sorry,
actually synonyms of.
Would you like to hang? Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter, does it?
Right. I don't see anybody in particular. My normal, dissenters are awfully quiet or out to lunch. Never go full debate. I like that, Liz. I like that. I'm gonna try to take that on. Always halfway debate, right? It's better for everyone, unless it's an actual debate. Then go full debate. But on the stream, on a panel, it's kind of fun to just try to do that balance. Always full debate. Emmanuel says. So, anybody, nobody. Where are they? I don't want agreeers. I don't want agreements. Posh is here.
Too easy.
Yeah, who needs agreement right now? I'll go over to the Dono chat just in case. See anything? All right. All caught up with super chats. Anything going on with you in the musical world? You got new instruments coming in, Posh. You got the J harp. Why don't you give us a J harp? See if it acts as like sort of a call to the atheists. If when they hear it, maybe they'll.
I'm afraid who might answer the summons.
Who knows who might show up?
Hello.
Yeah. Are there any notes on that thing, or you just forget about scales or melody?
No. It's too simple to have such things to demonstrate.
Nice.
It's just this moving part.
Okay.
That's it. So your mouth acts like an acoustic. What do you call it? Chamber.
Just the chamber. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So and you just sort of do this. I can't remember the word for that action, but flick. That's a good one.
Yeah, you guys have flick,
and then you change how much room there is by moving your tongue.
Like
no.
Oh,
the lips don't move. I'll show you. But it's how much how close your tongue is to your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
So of course you move it closer. There's less room, so it's a bit higher pitched, but nowhere near enough to be able to make a scale of it or something.
Oi!
And I keep hitting me.
Very nice. Well, you have your consistency down. We'll see if any atheists show up.
It's difficult to hit this thing constantly because you see it has like this little bend.
Yeah. You know what, Posh? I might beat you to the punch and add a J harp to the merch store. Maybe have something written on it that's an inside joke. Sounds like a didgeridoo. It really does. Or. Sounds like throat singing. It's like a cheat code for throat singing.
I never actually get to trying to learn throat singing. I always want to when I hear it, and then I forget.
Yeah.
I can simulate it, but I'm not doing it right. Saying, It's
Yeah.
not. I'm not doing what's supposed to be done.
Yeah, there are actually. I did watch a full YouTube tutorial on polyphonic. I think it's called polyphonic singing,
Polyphonic singing.
and it's much more basic approach than throat singing. Right? You know, the Tanatuva approach is like it's so dramatic, and you're trying to do the. You could do it because you have a very low voice, but I actually tried the techniques, and there was a moment where I produced a two tone. And I was just like, "What the hell was that?" It was almost frightening, actually. It was
Yeah.
It felt wrong, but you can do it, and you'll surprise yourself when that first sound comes out. It's pretty surprising that you can do that, but there's definitely
what
a
I've
technique
realized with a lot of instruments, but especially it was the first time I actually figured out how you're supposed to play the piano with two hands. You know, because my thinking was you practice with one hand and then you get that down so it becomes mechanical and then you only focus on the other. Turns out, no, that's not how you do it. It's the relationship between the movements. You know, I'll have to use your filthy American terms, like a full note, like a whole note, and then a semi and then a quarter note. And it's when with pauses as well, but you hold this for this and this long, and then this one stays there for double that. And you know, that's how you start thinking about it. And I remember, like with what you said, the first time I actually played something that I couldn't play for a year. And it took me like 2 hours with this new way of thinking about it to get it down. And it was shocking, you know, I couldn't believe it was so easy, but it's about mindset. And with things like throat singing and stuff, you're basically using muscles you're not accustomed to using. So it's a new experience, and it ends up being easy once you get the mindset down.
Jacob says, I can do it and make 3 harmonic mouths. Yeah, wow. I guess, that's a limit, right? There has to be a limit physically, right?
I assume so. I can make only one.
Yeah. You should try it. I'll send you the video, Posh, of someone teaching it, and you'll be like, I don't want to listen to this person.
It's not a woman in black and white video,
is it? It is.
I think I saw it. I don't know if I watched it, but I remember.
Yeah. I think I may have sent that to you when I was doing this. I was like, well, Posh will be able maybe to do this.
I'm not sure. But I remember seeing that video.
Yeah,
I don't remember watching it, or at least I just watched for a while and then I had to do something else.
Yeah,
which tends to be the end of a lot of my endeavors.
You probably had the correct, sort of impulse where you look at that woman, you're like, oh, this is the kind of lady that goes around naming trees and talking to like squirrels.
That's basically it.
So you were like, I don't like it. I don't know if there's going to be based polyphonic singers. I think they might all be gone. But
I don't know. There are things, can we make it based, or has it been mimetically so ruined by being associated with hippies?
Right.
But I also got like a ukulele, which is usually associated with that somewhere.
Yeah, the modern, that they all sing all
fat
weird.
Hawaiian guy.
Yeah, he started it all.
And then it's all very, very skinny women. That's basically the whole thing.
Yeah.
And but I use it and sung like nationalist songs and stuff. So I try to,
take it back.
Yeah, take it back from the
take
hippies.
Back the youth,
they don't believe in property, so
right.
You can take it.
That's true. Any other questions? Do you guys have any questions for Posh while he's here? I mean, we haven't done any rigorous theology, scripture in a long while. So if you had questions, now would be the time to ask him. Try to stump him biblically is fun game. Stump Posh biblically. I could even make a title for that for the next time. A little intro. Stump the redneck.
Stump. I want to show the mandolin.
Oh, nice. So it's staying in tune, okay?
It's very new, so you need to tune it like a couple of hours. But it's a hell to tune because it's so close together. But you can see a problem I have.
Oh yeah, wizard hands. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can play like a G, it works fine. I can play a C, which is just above that. But then you get an E,
Yeah.
and it looks like this,
Yeah.
and you can see how disfigured my hand gets, and
Posh,
not really working well.
Posh, I don't know if you have this where you are, but over here in the West, for people like you, they do have these rubber attachments that are other hands making chords for the mandolin, so you can
Really?
No. Can you imagine like a little hand on your finger that's holding a G chord? And you're just
I imagine like not the hands, but like little like a rubber
the rubber hand
tension.
things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That I can see working in very, very limited circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the sound of it, and I've been trying to learn some songs. It's still too early because,
Yeah. It's got a good tone.
Yeah. Again, it's still a bit new. So
what are you in GDEA?
No, let me think about it. I need to visualize the keyboard again because everything is a keyboard to me. It ends in E, E5,
CGEA. It's probably CGEA.
There's no C in it. It's E, G, D, A.
Oh, EGDA. EGDA.
Yeah. I think that's the standard tuning.
Right. Yeah, they're fun. They're fun. Do you have a pick to play those consistent?
I've only got the regular one.
Yeah.
I also got a book for it in German, so
right.
It's all explained very meticulously.
Mm-hmm.
You take with your finger, you will only. I saw what it's supposed to look like. It's a much larger, like longer pick.
Yeah.
So this one is. It doesn't resist well enough for me to be able to do that. But someone asked, take a guitar like a normal person. I do have a guitar.
Nice. Yep. There's a lot of debating in the chat, but I don't know if it's worthy of screen time. I'm still trying to sift out. I mean, usually the atheists are kind of loud and biting, and then they're gone. It's a shame. It's a damn
they
shame.
leave you hanging,
right.
mid debate. Somewhere over the rainbow, someone asked.
It's all CGA, isn't it? Venmo, Melissa Pohl said, great stream. Thank you so much, Melissa, for the donation. Yeah, I forgot about that. You guys, if you don't have your YouTube stuff, you can Venmo.com. It's up on the screen. Some people like to do that. They already have it all sorted. Touch on how Christians attack other Christians. Yeah, this is, I don't think, from the view that all Christians are Christians, I think there's something smuggled in there, but I understand what you're saying. Someone who claims to be a Christian, if there's some view that they hold and it's inconsistent with someone else, I think that's a necessity, unless what you're referring to is attack, like attacking just person or this kind of stuff. But if you're talking about debating, I think it's something that's not done enough, actually. I think there needs to be more contention between theological takes that are often...
should be intellectual, you shouldn't... Beer, yes.
Beer,
that's a big... That, especially with Lutherans, right?
Yeah.
Because they're from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't just say, we should all get along and form like a unified front. That's not going to work. The reason I know it's not, because if I saw Muslims form a unified front, what would you do? The first thing you do, okay, what about this thing that you have completely different and mutually exclusive interpretations of?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So obviously we don't want just carnage of any sorts or slander or whatever, but we do need, I believe orthodoxy is true, and I don't see how it would be good of me as a Christian to say, okay, you can believe that,
your truth,
Jesus is a created being, just the highest created being, or there's like a divine Jesus and a human Jesus, like Nestorianism or Macedonianism or whatever, right? So we shouldn't just ease into, okay, the things there are, like all Trinitarians can unite. Well, what type of Trinitarian, right? And then we go back to
it's part of the apophatic process, and even if it's grueling or contentious or draws up some passion or whatever, who would say they're a Christian and didn't also say that they want to seek and walk a narrow path, right? Well, the narrow path isn't just your activity, it's also your beliefs end up being sharpened. And so it seems to be I think Andrew put it best last night that, like, this expectation, especially in America, where it's like, no, being a Christian means being nice, and then nice leads to just letting people be, and then letting people be leads to rainbow churches, and now we're back to square one where we go, well, what's being defended here?
But also in the United States, you also have churches that take the rather opposite approach and aren't very nice about things or disagreements. But that also, of course, happened in Europe. But there's no ultimate solution to it. We're in a fallen state. We should endeavor to not allow ourselves to fall into certain types of frenzies. Or any type of frenzy, to be honest. I don't see it as a good frenzy.
Oh, I see what the debate here is. This is a common one. I don't need to become Orthodox to be saved. Well, the thing is, to say Orthodox and then how the term saved is often used, we'd probably agree, but it's smuggled in that there's this thing called you're saved and you're good. If you mean being with God, that the judgment's in your temporal favor right now. The Orthodoxy doesn't make a claim on the judgment, right? So we would agree, but we wouldn't know, right? So it's not something that's tied to the tradition or the practice, because you don't go around saying we know the judgment, therefore you have to come to the church because we already have the judgment layouts. We have the schematics of heaven or whatever. This is just not the approach, right? So,
and I had touched on that yesterday on my stream, talking about both seeing things as a techne, right? But also it's not an intellectual endeavor. We all have certain misconceptions. I get it. You don't believe in once saved, always saved, but then there are legitimate ways that the once saved, always saved people who believe in faith alone, who can flip that on you and say, well, are you saying that God's sacrifice was not good enough to clean you of sins? Question for Posh, money for Jim Bob. What are your thoughts on old calendar churches? Well, you mean like mine?
He's old calendar, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I like my church. I'd like to take this opportunity to endorse the Serbian Orthodox Church. So we didn't shift, actually. We like it that way, and we actually, all Orthodox churches agree on the date of Easter. So that is the one thing where we all unite and agree. The rest we do according to our respective calendars. And again, because it's not techne, it's actually ritualized liturgical worship. It's not like, oh, these guys get this type of grace and the other type of grace. Again, yesterday I tried to talk about how theosis is not like a mechanism. It's not like, oh, I ingested an amount of grace, so now I get 3 theosis points. No, it's spiritual, so it can't be quantified in those types of thinking. I like being old calendar because you just make fun of people who are on the new calendar. Oh, modernizers, The new calendar, very orthodox. It's just an ask.
And does Santa Claus appear differently? In January, do you guys do Santa Claus differently?
No, actually, yes, and to such an extent that he's actually not Santa Claus. He's Grandpa Frost, and that entered during communism actually, and we celebrated for New Year's. Because you're not going to let some saint enter the picture when it's communism, right? Also in Greece, the saint they celebrate as the gift giver is actually Saint Basil the Great, and I think I told people, if you type in Santa Claus into Google Translate into Greek, it will translate as Oios Vasileos, so to Saint Basil. Right, because it translates the concept, not the word itself, which is hilarious to me. But
Juan Mendoza says, "Someone give me. Are you Mendoza's dad?" Or I actually don't even know this guy Trump Whopper's position. It seems to be all happening in the chat. I don't even know if we need to engage with it, but I wish I knew his position, so there was something specific. If he did want to jump on, he can contend or affirm something, but if you don't want to, that's fine.
I think earlier he asked whether we don't believe that the Bible is the word of God. Well, Christ is the word of God.
Theos is the video game.
Just don't let EA Games make it.
Yeah.
We can't afford the DLCs.
I actually mentioned this before, and someone sent me a clip like the day after the stream. I was saying that, like, the whole tunnel Ninja Turtle thing, how in the very near future, I think we're actually here already, is that video games will become ubiquitous in their creation. So now they're ubiquitous in their consumption, but I'm saying in the creation of a video game, that someone like anyone in the chat, Posh, me, some event could happen, and the tech is available to generate at least a very rudimentary game that's playable one level, let's say, or something like this. And lo and behold, someone sends me the day after the stream with like the Ninja Turtle thing, a game with like these Orthodox, Jews jumping and fighting in tunnels and stuff. And I was like, wow, the future of memes might not be comic style the way I do them. I think those will always exist, but the future of memes is kind of exciting if the future of memes is weekly kinds of video games that you can just kind of play like 30 seconds of, and that's the whole thing, right? A minute. And
well, hasn't that been done earlier? I mean, obviously now the way of doing it is different, but you had like hunting Dick Cheney and and you had like ones where you box someone in the face and they've got like the face. So they have been making video games, but now I think it's so easy to streamline.
Yeah.
Like you go make like Super Mario with a certain overlay.
one overlay in the shape of a back reversed L. No, I think it's actually exciting, and part of it's horrifying, isn't it? Because we can think of the games that suit our ethical stance while also really being sort of provocative in other ways, but the other people that we're fighting against will make the worst of the worst. So it's like it's a double-edged sword.
Rule 34 applies to a lot of things, a lot of media. If you don't remember what Rule 34 is.
Yeah, what is it?
That everything that exists will have like a porn version of it.
Right.
Yeah, so the world is a rather difficult place.
Right.
But so how easy it is to make these things is rather frightening,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think a lot of us have a very negative view on things, right? Because a lot of things have been used for nefarious purposes, but have on the whole been rather useful. But AI is such a game changer. It's not like oh, we have a higher quality, like Photoshop. It's not on the level of videos or images is so much easier. It's more like the internet being invented.
Right.
That's the level I see it at. So it's disconcerting to think about the potentials.
Yeah, and it's so, like you said, we have this conversation of whether things like technology or like, let's say, virtual worlds, their very existence, are they morally, ethically neutral? And I've tried to battle this stuff too, because the question of how we interact with the world is in question. Like, do you go away from things that are completely degenerate, right? So you don't get the ick on you, and to what extent are you called into those places to battle out, if it's possible, is an interesting question. And I don't have an answer to who gets to do that and who shouldn't do that. But isn't it false to say that, because if there's a myth of neutrality, does it apply to just tech existing, like in any form?
Well, tech isn't bad in and of itself. It's how it's used. The thing is, I think the constantly degenerating, barriers to certain things, certain ways of thinking, certain things being considered acceptable. That's what's concerning me, because you've always had plenty of degeneracy. It used to be hidden. It used to be, you would sneak into a brothel or something, and now the brothel is in your house, as far as you're concerned.
Right.
But it's that things are not being shunned anymore. Or at least they've found other things to shun. So it's not immoral to consume pornography because it's the improper approach to sexuality. It demeans you as a bearer of the image of God, etc. It's because it objectifies women.
It's a lie. Yeah. Oh
yeah.
You're saying that the cope for it now, right?
So it's like with atheists, a lot of people are trying desperately to hang on to social norms and are just trying to,
fit them
put
in
whatever they can. And if it holds for like a year, it holds, but it's better than just free fall.
Yeah. It's not just that it's the absence of shunning. I wish we're at that phase. It's actually, at least in America, it's celebrated. Like, I don't know, that was a quick ride, right? For between something being shunned to then being celebrated, where we're not even talking about, it's not shunned as it used to be. Well, no, it's the complete opposite in certain countries, including this one, where it's just...
Trump Whoppers actually wants to call in.
Oh, he does? Oh, that's fine.
So you should post the link.
Trump Whoppers it is. All right. Here we go. Trump Whoppers, you're welcome on. I don't even know his position, Posh, so I'm gonna.
I haven't.
I'm gonna observe.
What comports to reality?
Peyton says, "Drop the link." Well, the link is for opposition today. I told you I don't want agreements. I want some contention today. Betty doesn't call Kunks. Ooh, agitator. I like that strawberry eating. That's funny. It's really animated. That almost looks AI. Well done.
Oh, that's kind of meta to make non-AI look
non-AI
AI-like.
look. Yeah, that'll be the future. Posh should be like, can't believe it's not AI.
You intentionally make it bad.
Yeah.
Not
like
bad necessarily, but make like a mistake that an AI wouldn't.
Yeah, like the ear is closed, like they didn't do the hole in the ear, or they if you tell it to like old lady eating a sandwich, the sandwich is somehow like melded to the hand in AI. It's like broken dreams that we remember. That's why it's so special to look at. Some of it is just like, well, you're not making all the connections. The things aren't connecting.
I'd rather like AI doesn't match to some of the things I dream up, and then I think I said I have had that problem since I was very little. It makes you creative in a sense when you keep dreaming of things. But I remember, the whole "if you die in your sleep, you die in real life." I knew that wasn't the case since I was 7 or something. You're just making things up.
Vegans call in. Yeah, if some vegans want to come, I always enjoy vegans. Where's the guy? He said he wanted to call in.
That's a diplomatic phrasing of it.
This is a common thing, right? They get loud, and then they get the link, and then they disappear as soon as the link shows up in the chat. It's just like, what? Really? So the link shows up.
Poor bluff game.
Oh, is this his position? I don't know. This is obviously hyperbolic, but we're cult followers following fables. Okay. So is it just in general, or like, yeah, I put the link.
Still here.
Yeah, click the link. It's right there.
We've little use of you being there. We need you to be here.
Yeah, over here. You got to get over here. Vegan, aka food. That's actually true for them. That's funny. That's actually true for them.
I love seeing the memes, like like there's someone drinking from like a pine, like a coconut, and then there's someone drinking from their mouth, like with a straw, and it's like plants, then animals, and then the person is like a meat eater getting plant nutrients through the animals, and in the back like a smiling person drinking directly from just drinking from it. Says like vegans. So okay, how much grass would you need to eat to get the same nutrition you would from like a pound of beef?
Right. Yeah,
the answer is no, none.
Yeah. Trump whoppers, you guys know what the difference is between chickpeas and kidney beans? Is the answer click the link? Because that's the only thing we really care about. It sounds like, are you avoiding the link?
Trump won in Iowa, so he's so confident in his victory.
Right, that's what happened.
That he can hang out here.
Yeah.
He was endorsed by Vivek.
Oh, I see. He's doing the contradictions. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you shouldn't post the link again if he just doesn't call in. Because
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember watching Andrew on the Whatever podcast, and that girl who wanted to leave, and then, no, we'll talk to you right now.
Right.
Have you never heard of Dane's Guild? Like, you cannot pay off the Vikings to leave. They'll just come back because you'll pay them off again. You're setting a precedent that anytime someone thinks they aren't getting enough attention, they'll just, I guess I'll leave now.
Yeah. And then everyone focuses on them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what slaps are for.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That actually probably would be a good behavior for even a bot. They're just like agitate, and then go, where's the link? I'm going to call in. And then they're just a bot that never calls. And then eventually maybe it'll get advanced enough where the bot actually calls in.
Oh, yeah.
and then Christians and atheists have their own bot army that are convincing enough. And we all know it's kind of a bot, but we don't care because the exchange is so funny. That's probably in the next year and a half as well.
Well, it grows exponentially, so maybe even sooner.
Sooner, maybe it's already here. I always say, who's that Vanderbilt guy who does the news? Who has a different name? Anderson Cooper. That I always say, like, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's definitely not really him. And
imagine you're Vanderbilt, right? It's this powerful sounding name, a very wealthy, influential family, and you go with Cooper, like make barrels.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense.
No,
why do they always change their name? Why do they always change their name?
Because you don't want to be called Vanderbilt if you're trying to be, a genuine, impartial deliverer of news.
Yeah, but the other guys, with the Bergs and the Steins, it's always like, oh, I'm going to change it to King. I'm going to change it to this or that.
Like a certain Adam King.
Yeah. Like why?
I hope you saw the clips at least of that debate. I had to watch the entire thing.
It was a mess. Isn't Andrew supposed to be on with what's his name soon, right?
Gavin?
Get his name. Yeah. I think Gavin might be on the Crucible or vice versa. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I got the news from you, so...
Yeah. Well, if Andrew's on with someone, they're on the Crucible because he co-streams any engagement. So Michael Kreshmer. Kreshmer.
Oh, I forgot to say, I came up with the pun. Alex O'Gona.
Oh, nice. Gone. That's... Oh, man.
That's perfect. That's just perfectly retarded.
Do you know Anderson Cooper basically eats chicken tenders and probably... Yeah, maybe. I mean, I went down that inquiry of like, who are these people and what are they doing? And then it goes down to dark places. And then you're like, well, that might be true. Do I want to go? Do I want to know more? And almost every time the answer is no. I don't.
Well, there are people. I keep saying there are people who can get through exploring certain things. It's not a, it's not a temptation for them. Sort of like how I can read through any type of magic or dark arts or things. I always thought of that as gay. So I can read about it and never feel the need to ever practice any of it.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are tempted towards such things. There are people who really shouldn't go into these rabbit holes because they will be emotionally very distraught.
Yeah, they get devoured, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin says atheists are definitely supported by bots. Like even on unrelated videos, you can find atheist comments being spammed, even if the video is not related. Yeah, I've seen that actually. Well, the what's kind of funny there is that atheists believe they're actually just wet robots too. Like so, from their view, if it fools you, it's fine, right? It's just as valid that house rights.
Yeah.
House rights.
Muslims have an approach. They tend to be more spammy, but in the old-fashioned sense. They don't use bots, but I love.
What do
they write?
What do they use? Vests?
No. They just use old-timey.
I thought you were alluding to something else. I'm sorry. George Washington bar for $5. 5 delayed punchline. Not all Jews are up to something. That's true. But every J who hides their J is up to something. J Stewart. I don't know if that's even true. Maybe they're ashamed. Maybe what they're up to is they don't like I could see someone socially trying to assimilate. Like for instance, Chinese people move here and they get rid of their name pragmatically. They don't want it to be a distraction or some sort of
they
divider.
don't want their names to sound like euphemisms for penis.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes. So there's a practical reason. There is a practical reason there that you'd have to at least.
There they are.
There they are. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like different. Like it's different actually, though, because the Chinese who changes their name from like Xing Pao to Cindy, it's not like they could hide that they're Chinese, right? You just go, oh, you're Cindy, and that's obviously not really your name. Now, certain people who change their name, you could still tell who they are, but there are some maybe not so much. I don't know.
Imagine someone's going, well, her name is Cindy, she can't be Chinese, so she must be squinting all the time. They can't accept it.
Posh, you have squinty eyes, you know that?
Not really. I have tiny eyes, but they're not particularly squinty. So I do make a lot of Mongolian jokes.
They're Eskimo. You have Eskimo vibes.
Yeah. I would go for either Inuit or that.
Okay.
But I think it's not, it's like they're tiny.
There he is again.
But my facial hair suggests Asian descent.
Are you going to call in, or is Posh right about that you're just an attention-seeking device?
No. Stop giving him attention.
Yeah.
You've posted the link 3 times.
Yeah.
So obviously he's not going to. it's not that difficult to have
No.
equipment to call in. So it's
True.
obviously a lack of willingness to.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's forget him. Do we have any bids? Do we have anybody? Anybody? Are you saying that 331 people are all some form of a proposed Christian, a theist, a God believer, and not a single one who opposes can come on and be like, this is what I think. This is what I think.
I don't know. Maybe shift more to theology again, so people call into argue theology.
Right.
But it looks like no biters for this.
Yeah.
I don't know. You didn't title the stream in any way that would be confusing. Like, I don't know what's going on here.
Right. Yeah. Atheist Fails. No, you know what you get? For those who are lurking, they'll probably, the people who do actually do content and make videos, they'll just do a review of it, or something like this instead of just getting on.
That's fine. But
yeah, that's fine.
Why miss out on an opportunity?
Right. Yeah, especially the Lispy guy. He did a stream trying to battle pre-suppers, and you had two right here that he could just call in. And now, to be fair, I don't know if he actually was notified, but I did ask people to go over and make it known.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't want to share engagement. We've both interacted with him personally. On the Crucible Me on his channel.
Right.
He was much more clothed in my exchange.
That's right.
Ironically, I was in a wife beater.
Right, I know. Right.
He was just balancing things out.
Yeah. He just took his shirt off during the debate out of nowhere.
Andrew has the perfect face for being like surprised but still happy about it.
He's like, yeah, totally. He was like, oh, okay, here we go. The beginning. Oh well. I did see, what is his name? I did see some people simping for T-Jump. There's this thing now, Posh, and I kind of understand it, to try to get into their shoes, where the ortho brosphere, the debate bullies, the precept bullies, this kind of thing. I could see from their view what they think they're seeing, right? But I wouldn't let up on any level of aggression because of that. But I think there's now this phenomenon where they just, there are some people who just want the louder people to be finally be owned, right? To and we get that with other people. So I want the louder atheists to finally be confronted and owned. So I'm not I'm not immune to it, but I think we're in that phase now where the meanie Jay Dyers or Andrew or anyone else, that it's time, we got to stand up and shut them up finally.
We're finally on the offensive, right? That's a sort of euphoria that comes from that, which can often be misplaced. It's one thing to listen to Jay, and a different thing to be Jay in a debate.
Right. I got called a precept Philo bro, and honestly was offended. I don't even think, that's funny. Yeah. No, well, you only need to say one thing, right? You just say, do you have a justification for that? And then that's it. I mean, you're a preceptor asking, and that's the irony, is that the atheist, the rationalist, the one who's using logic and reasoning, asking for a justification is pretty much within their epistemic system, right? But when you ask them, how do you justify the things you're using? It's suddenly, you sound like Matt Slick, you sound like Jay Dyer, does that mean the question's invalid or not?
That's actually a very old trick. A lot of people use it. People on our side of it also, unfortunately. It's like the mark of an amateur historian is to project themselves in a different time. Likewise, this is more approaching things like you would as a politician. oh, that's a right-wing talking point. Well, okay, maybe because it's correct and they think they can hammer it, and say it's a right-wing talking point. That's a defensive move.
Right.
Not an offensive move. It's sort of to get your people to fall in line, and reject it as a form of how shall we say loyalty.
But ultimately that method, isn't it just sophistry? Like you're just evading and not dealing with it. Yeah.
Pure
Snoopy says, do you guys have people on often? Not usually. I used to in my old in the old days. Anybody would just jump on.
That's how I got here.
Yeah, that's how Posh got here. And Posh has his own channel, which leads to this next part of the question. I'm renovating my office, but once it's done, I'd love to come on and ask a bunch of questions. I just left the Catholic Church. Love to learn more. Yeah, you should go follow Posh at the Posh Redneck. This channel, actually, for the most part, won't provide you what you need. There's better places for that, honestly. When Posh is on, that's fine. When he's not, you should go follow him. Go to the Discord. I forgot what it's called. I don't know how to. I don't know the name to search.
Discord,
yeah,
I think
is that
very simple?
Okay, yeah, just search that, and there's going to be better people than me to answer your questions, Snoopy.
Yeah, and a lot of them actually more apt to explain things than I do because I waffle on for 5 hours, and I end up confusing people. But over there, they have people who have now had years of experience of talking to lapsed Catholics and Protestants,
and you won't get.
But I'm happy to help it to the extent that I can.
Yeah, you won't get the extra old man, tone, right, from Posh and the judgment underneath. He'll like say some aspect of orthodoxy, and you could almost hear the judgment of everything else underneath it. Shannon, are you in opposition? You could nod your head yes or no. No, yeah. I'm looking for opposition today. It's just not out there. It's just, I'm looking for opposition. Oh, are you in opposition? No. I mean, he's funny. He's like, this is actually kind of fun. I'm going to ask him questions and he has to do, he has to talk.
What you're responding to.
It's like a silent movie. Yeah, I wish it was someone else. Toilet Bowl Earth says, I found the Roman Catholic Posh Redneck in a papacy debate. They must meet. That's interesting. That could be organized.
I think I know whom he means. He's American though, so he hasn't got the accent, but he's got a pretty deep voice. Sort of talks like this, and is that the guy? Something like.
Did you just make fun of yourself?
Have you heard me ever talk about my facial hair?
Oh yeah, you have a beard like Andrew, by the way. Look at that.
What has Andrew done to wrong you so much?
No. I don't know if. You were asleep by then. Last night, by the end, Andrew, I guess his confidence in all of his success, thinks he could maybe find success in any field, any location, and that location was my beard, and he's challenged me on my beard. I think I've got a better beard, and his own chat destroyed him. There's no way it was even close. Tons of L's or tons of noses in the chat all the way down.
Oh, he's got a good beard, so he just shot too high. You can't compete. Shot a little too high. No. Like there is one group of people who tend to frequent the sewers that can compete with Italians when it comes to facial hair. So really missed with that.
And this is trimmed. I haven't even done like the full, downward thing. But yeah, it's not even close. But so that was good. He took a bill, and it was good. It was actually good for him. It was actually where else is he going to get the humility? He's not going to get it from his own chat unless there's a good reason. So he provided his own reason to get the L's. So that was good. It's good for everybody.
You see, if you had brought me in, I could have roasted him. That's what I do when he's there. I just make fun of him.
Right.
And he does likewise, but he's Irish. So
right. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fun to go back and forth with him. And again, more atheists like Doug who can handle that. I don't know. Maybe T-Jump in a year or so can build the skin to do like sort of rhetorical sparring and have it be fun and not just like, you know. Maybe he can do that. But if that show can offer that to people, that'd be actually be fun to get more people on who oppose if they know that's the context. I think more is permitted.
I wanted to yesterday.
Shoulders first, shoulders. He should. He should. Now, to be fair, he's always in layers. You can tell he's just like, you know, he's got a jacket on. He's got an extra big comedian shirt from the '90s on. You know, and he's got a dark room. You know,
wears a hat indoors.
But
which
I'm not going to
tends
challenge.
to suggest someone being bald. You know,
right. But
if someone wears a beanie, for example.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He isn't.
Nope.
I mean.
No.
So, but I win on the shoulders front.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that's Garrett was visiting Serbia recently, and he told me, "Oh, there's such great people here." And I wrote back, I said, "The souls of hobbits and the appearance of Uruk-hai." So
that's funny. Souls of hobbits. The flannel adds 5 pounds at least. You know, like. That's funny. Not even width, just pounds. Yeah. Well, yeah. I would. You know, if I did the dark room element and you just saw like a slight facet of my face lit up, and that was the only thing you saw aside from like a cigarette burning one every like couple minutes, like the red, I'd get away with a lot more. But here I am.
Lost a lot of your beard.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Lost a lot of it. Yeah. Yeah, he did say, well, let's have a beard off, like, let's see who can pull off no beard better. And I would still win, probably. I just wouldn't want to do it.
We remember the picture.
We saw. Oh, yeah, you remember. Yeah. You remember
it's seared into my brain.
Right. Grow your own. Hey, JB, thanks for all the great content. Good to see Posh also. Yes. Hello. Thanks for being a member for 11 months. Well, awesome. Reverse Peckman. Yeah, everyone's giving me coaching now, and it's not going to do anything. Let's say I beef up. Oh wow, you really widen your shoulders. You think it's not going to be something else immediately? Like how this works. You just explained it, Posh, with the guy in the chat. It's the same principle, isn't it?
Yeah.
They'll just move over to something else to get me to respond.
And then what would the person who runs the account Jim Bob's Shoulders do?
Yeah. What would they do?
You're destroying jobs.
Yeah.
In this economy?
Yeah. And what do I get anyway? Do I really get an elevated social status online if suddenly I work out my shoulders and they're what? What's the maximum? An inch and a half wider on each side? Tops,
try a flannel,
without looking weird.
That helps.
Yeah, just a flannel with wires in it, Andrew. A flannel with wires in it.
He takes a bra and like cuts
yeah, just a straight.
Padding.
Michael would code $5. Glad to support the homies. Glad to see Posh. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, we're at 250. Posh, what do you got going on your channel, The Posh Redneck? And before you do that, everybody. If you didn't, take this moment for a second, close the chat. It takes 2 seconds. Swipe the chat up, hit the little thumbs up, please. It really helps a lot. It's a tiny task, and it goes a long way for me. So please do that now. And there you go. You got rewarded with little people singing. These people never get old.
Well, I have to say, like Middle Earth, when you say China in Chinese, you say Chonghua, which literally means Middle Earth. So that explains the hobbits.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think you may be onto something with the big head. It's always been said to me, in person you would see it more. You'd see like, wow, I was making fun of his shoulders the whole time. Those are just generally proportionate to my body and my height size. It's the head that's astronomically out of proportion. So, but that's a treat for people who ever meet me in person.
With me, basically, like I've got a big head and I've got big shoulders, and then I have wider hips. So, like as I said, I'm a bit like a log. It's just this tube of serpent. So yeah, and that's why I'm 6'1" and weigh 240 pounds. So that's
yeah.
fun.
Well, that's the Inuit thing. Again,
Yeah,
the Eskimo
I'm meant
thing.
to hunt seals and
seal fat. Yeah. The best thing that you can do for the channel, if you can't send JB money, is to like and share. That's correct, Sean. Thank you very much for that. It does help a lot. And anyone listening who follows over at Posh, remember to do that for him as well when he's streaming. It really does help. There is an algorithm war, and they call you into action, and it does make a difference. So we want people like Posh to be found as well. I want to be found, and I've never really played that game, so now I'm playing. Posh, go ahead and shout your channel out and give us a summary of what you do over there. There's probably some people who've never heard, and anything coming up on your channel.
Right. So yesterday I unintentionally fixed the camera problem, which was causing me to delay a lot, thinking I had to move to OBS. But it is fixed, so now I can actually work, because I don't like the idea. It's annoying that the video was lagging. So the first thing I plan on doing is most likely on Sunday, just do a shorter stream, maybe play some music, sing a bit, to test if this problem is still not there anymore. But starting next week, I'll be doing more dedicated streams. Like we'll be doing on a stream on the Book of Romans, right? The Epistle to the Romans, because that's one that comes up a lot. It's the longest epistle of St. Paul. It is where people appeal to for both faith alone and things like predestination. So that's a lot that needs to be addressed. And I'll be continuing with, because I can write on whiteboards now, with my word analysis, and that's the one that I want to address with faith and stuff. That's probably the week after that. But I plan on doing a lot with languages, with Latin classes can start if the camera is working well, because that was a big thing. Right. I like writing on boards to explain things, and as I can repeat now, if you're trying to learn a language, don't go for typing, go for writing things down with a pen and paper, right. Because the muscle memory is an additional memory aid to when you're trying to remember words or how things are phrased, etc., etc. It's sort of like when you forget, if you're the type of person who forgets whether they locked the door, you sort of say, I locked the door, so you have an additional thing to remind you. So that's about it. I'm happy to go into full production now.
Awesome. And Posh will be on the Mixed Bag panel. I'm trying to place him in the right position with the right people. Next week, definitely Andrew coming back, and Tim Gordon, who's a Catholic YouTuber. So I'm trying to figure out, I'll talk more with you, Posh, about where you might want to be given the other guests. I definitely want you on again when Pine Creek's on. I think that would be fun as well, because I think he would take a liking to you. And so, yeah, I think that's it. Again, for people who love the panel show on Thursdays, if there are people, whether agnostic, atheist, or Christian, or any variety of positions that have channels, right, that and the size doesn't matter as much as how committed they are to just streaming. Send them my way, madebyjimbob@gmail, or direct message me, or write it in a comment of this video or anything else. I'm trying to get more people on this list to then book them ahead of time so that we can make these panels really good and sharp. So, yeah. That's it for me, Posh. I'm going to play you out with your own thing I've had saved since the beginning. God bless you, Posh. Have a good day, and I'll see you around the internet streets.
Thank you for having me, and God bless.
And just like that, he was gone. JB, I have a friend with a decent following. Yeah, please reach out, Sean. You know, we're going to kind of... Here's the other thing I'm doing is I'm going to do one that's pretty long, right? The normal ones on Thursday, they're always going to be about 2.5 hours, 3 hours. That's plenty of time. But I'm planning like a massive one, maybe in a month, that rotates a lot of people all throughout the day into the evening. And I think that's going to be really fun. So again, Sean, and anyone else, if you have contacts, if you have people you know, or they know somebody, we definitely want them to choose from at least. It's not confirmed, but we want options. God bless you, Liz. Liz, crack me up, Liz. Debate me now. Jeez, I'd like to buy a hamburger. I'd like a hamburger. Oh, that sounds amazing. All right, that's it for me. God bless y'all. Thanks again to Posh for jumping on, and see you guys next time. All right, have a good weekend. Adios.